Good evening, Kevin. Just wanted to let you know that we are streaming, so we are live.
Welcome, everyone. As a reminder, we are already recording, so we are live. If you could leave your microphones muted until we get started, it'd be very much appreciated.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Miss Abby. A couple of you just joined. I just want to remind you we are live. Try to get going right here at 7, everyone. We're still missing Craig. Give him a chance to get in. Kevin, are you all set with the flags, sir?
Yes, I'm all set. You mean 6:30, right? Not 7.
6:30.
All right. Making sure. I was like, oh, I'm really early.
I just got through a text on the Panther Live Facebook page for the girls' varsity game at 7 o'clock. I had 7 o'clock. Yeah.
So we're on the same page. That's all right.
I still don't see Craig. All right, unless somebody has heard from Craig, I have not. We do have a quorum, so we will go ahead and get started. Hopefully he joins us here very soon. So I will call this meeting to order. 1.02, Pledge of Allegiance. Kevin, if you have the flag, sir, if you'd be ever so kind to share that.
Absolutely. Let's see. And that should be it, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone would like to join me? Recite after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. 1.03, I'd like to remind everybody of the norms of collaboration. 1.04, roll call. Miss Secretary Sarah, if you may.
Yep. Dawn Fortson.
Here.
Abby Green.
Here.
Sarah Jones here. Craig Corpola. Dana Wells Jenny.
Here.
Jeff Wolfersberger.
Here.
Tim Wood.
I'm here.
Thank you, Sarah. 1.05, addenda. Does any board members have anything to add to tonight's agenda?
Yes, I do. I would like to discuss the building opening time at the middle school, please, if you could add that.
I do not see a problem in adding that. We will add middle school. Scheduled time as 3.08. Anyone else, board members, have anything to add?
Hey, Jeff, I'd like to talk about rescinding the motion that I made last week at the emergency school meeting for adding to the letter.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes, sir.
in order to add anything to the agenda, you have to go through the same steps as to have a motion, and then you have to have discussion, and then it goes to being added. So the board has to vote in order to actually add anything to the agenda.
Kevin, that was my bad advice. I thought the president could just had the ability to do that himself.
Yeah, they have to actually go through, and all the members have to
Okay.
vote. Yep.
Sorry, Jeff.
No problem.
Not a big deal either way.
Yep.
No problem.
Question.
For listening to me.
That's right.
It's okay.
Question.
I appreciate Abby. I have a hand up.
We do. Thank you. I think there's a few members in another meeting. They're trying to join. Was there another link that was sent out today? Was there an old link and a new link?
There were a couple links sent out today, yes.
Okay.
So let's see, Jackie's there. Let's see if Jackie can share.
Sorry, I just lost lost for a second. Who's trying to join?
Mr. Corpola, Roshan, Mr. Bates, Mike Bates.
Okay, they all have the same link. So let me try. I heard Michael Bates and Craig. Who was the other one?
Roshan.
Okay,
I see Michael Bates is here.
Also Stephanie Bruce. I
Okay,
think what's
yeah.
happening is they're going to a calendar and they're clicking on the district calendar that was put out at the beginning of the year that doesn't have, that has nothing to do with these board meetings.
Yeah, so for Craig though, like I send this in the email and everybody, so let me send it to him again.
Tammy, we just went to the email link that was sent out today, the updated one, and that's where Roshan, Craig, and I were.
Okay.
But when you go
looks
to
like Jackie's gonna send that out again.
Jackie, there was an email update that just went out like a couple hours ago, and I went to that one first, and then I noticed nobody was there, so I left and came to this one. So somehow we got two going. That's okay.
Better party, Abby.
We'll find it. That's right.
I think that second one was for next week's meeting.
It could be. I've just done that enough times. I know if I get there and I'm the only one there, I got the wrong one. Yeah, I've done it a lot.
Okay, if you don't mind, let's give our guest a minute here to join us in the correct link.
Okay, I did send it out. So if somebody else doesn't have it, let me know and I'll send a link again.
Thank you, Jackie. There's Craig.
All right.
While we're waiting for the couple more, if I could ask Sarah, could you finish roll call now that Craig is here? Please and thank you.
Craig Corpola.
Here.
Thank you very much. Now it's official. All right, we're going to go ahead and get going. Kevin, correct me when we get to that point. I don't know what you have for visitors, so if they're not here, then we'll help out at that time. Okay, roll call. Addenda. Dana has brought up wanting to add a discussion item for tonight to discuss middle school start time. Anybody have anything on that?
Well, if she made the motion, I'll second it.
Thank you, ma'am.
So you're ready for discussion?
Anybody? Discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My only question is if that's something that that Kevin and Jeff have are ready to discuss tonight, and whether it's something urgent that we need to talk about tonight, or if it can be planned for a future meeting. So maybe Dana can help me know those answers.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give you a little bit more feedback, Abby. I'm very concerned about the traffic flow, the change in the building open time. We've had the same building open time for 10 years. It's been 7 o'clock. My kids have been in the building. This is the 5th year. It's been 7 o'clock all 5 years. I drive my kids to school every day, and now the traffic is as far back as the high school, waiting to get in line. And these kids are congregating outside of the schools. They're not 6 feet apart. We want to keep them 6 feet apart. Parents are dropping them off. They're leaving them. And the minute they get on our property, they're our responsibility by law. So that's why I wanted to bring up and discuss it further.
Okay, I guess my question was, I'm assuming, I know it's a really good thing to discuss. My question was, usually to add something to the agenda, we try to not spring it on the superintendent. We try to give him a chance to prepare. So in order for me to know how to vote, I was just wondering if Kevin was prepared to talk about that tonight, if he knew that was coming in as a proposed agenda addition, and also if it's urgent or whether it's something that can be put off a week so that he has a chance to prepare if he isn't. Those are really the only two things that will help me know how to vote on the motion.
Well, I've sent him a couple of emails to talk about this, and as well as the fact that it's like this morning, like kids were standing outside for like at least 10 minutes and it was -7 real feel. So I do think it's urgent. I don't think it's not going to get warm anytime soon. So that's why one of the reasons I really wanted to discuss this sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, can I ask if you are prepared or not for this to be added?
No, I am not prepared because I've actually given the answer in an email that went to all the board members. And if the what Dana is sharing is true, then I would be doing the same thing as I did last year with taking data as to how long the cars are waiting in line. And I brought this to the board last year when this was also a situation that was taken care of after speaking to the assistant principal and Deputy Hillman. And we also had an opportunity to snap some pictures that I was able to share also. So if I'll need to go back and create that in order to bring it back for the board, I could have more data to support, and the actual copy of the teacher's contract and the page, and be able to bring all that at the same time, which is all factors as to what is posted as I sent out to all the board members compared to what the actual situation is compared to what was and what is now. So yeah, I need time to pull that data together.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else for discussion?
Yes, I'd like to give my input. I have been hearing the same thing as Dana is saying, and I know Kevin's response was that the teachers aren't contracted until 7/15. I just would like it to be considered that maybe there is support staff there that would be willing to monitor those halls and things like that. That's just a suggestion.
So maybe we could vote on the motion before we discuss the topic, because I think the motion is whether to put it on the agenda or not. And then.
Correct. Any more questions on adding this to the agenda?
Hey, Jeff, I have a question. Actually, it's for Mr. Simmons. Hey, Kevin, I think we have a meeting coming up on the 15th. Does that give you enough time to get the data together, how long it's taking, how many kids we're talking about? all that?
That's correct. I'd also send you that data before the 15th so that you have those points to discuss before we get there also.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Sarah, if you'd like to take a vote to add this to the agenda for this evening.
Okay. Abby Green.
No.
Sarah Jones, no. Craig Corpola.
No.
Dana.
Yes.
Jeff.
No.
Tim.
No.
Dawn.
Yes.
Okay.
Request does not pass. Now on to Tim. Sir, would you like to add anything to the agenda this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess, make a motion to rescind my motion of last week's meeting to add verbiage to the letter addressed to Governor Whitmer that we add in-person board meetings to that. I understand now, and we talked about it a little bit, that it's kind of a logistical issue and doesn't provide a common front with the rest of the school board. So I'd like to remove that.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Abby.
Kevin, are you ready to discuss that one? Same question.
Yeah, I actually, and since that was one that was more of a board's decision and not an agenda item that I had, then yes, that would be more of, what do you call it, rescinding something that is there. So it depends on how much discussion the board wants to have. They just need to have that discussion and then vote on it.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Tim on this topic? Sarah, if you would take a vote to add this to the agenda for this evening.
Okay, I'll start with myself. Sarah, I'm voting yes. Craig?
I'll have to abstain because I don't know the details.
Okay.
Actually, you can't abstain.
You are in the meeting.
I have no knowledge of the what happened at the meeting, so I'm unable to make any judgment. So I guess I can vote no.
Thank you.
Dana?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Request passes. This will be added on to tonight's agenda as 3.08 for discussion. Any other board members have anything to add for this evening? Kevin, do you have anything to add for this evening?
I do not, sir.
Thank you. We will move on to 2.01, comments from the public. Tammy, do we have any?
We have nobody signed up for comments this evening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We will move right into discussion. 3.01, IRS closing arguments. Kevin, if you would, sir, take it from here.
Yes, I'm going to have Angina to speak more on this point. And I know you had an opportunity to look over the document. Angina, if you would, please.
Yeah, so the closing agreement and what that is back, this was a few years ago, there was a 3% that was withheld for healthcare on the retirement system. So, and how that worked was there was a lot of controversy on how to handle that, whether it was to be taxable, whether it was pre-tax, and kind of how that was handled. So what this has been going on for years with ORS and the complications of it all. So what they've come up with is that they're getting finally a final legal opinion from from the IRS how those withholdings were to be handled. And this is a closing agreement that we can join and sign along with all the districts in Michigan with whoever chooses to do so. With that, it's I can't remember if it's March 1st or March 8th is when we have to make the final decision. March
Yep.
1st, Kevin said, that we have to make the final
Right.
decision. And Troon has been also weighing in on this matter, as they're our attorney in representation of the school. So we've been kind of watching that to see. I don't believe how Pennfield handled it. I wasn't here at the time, but how Pennfield handled it is what the closing agreement says. So I don't think there's any changes that Pennfield would have to make or anything any different that we would have to do as far as, you know, refunding any withholding money or anything like that. But it would just be making it official and signing on to the agreement that, yes, we agree with the IRS's I guess, final answer to us on how that should have been held.
And if I may add, one of the pages actually from Troon Law says that the board has to vote in order to agree to be a part of this. Isn't it a class action, Angina? After reading it, I thought it was a class action, and that was the reason all the other districts are involved. It's one of the attachments that was sent out, but the board would have to make an action.
Yeah, the Troon's recommendation was for the board to actually make the recommendation or vote on whether to sign the agreement or not.
So, could you, Angina, could you give us that wording that you need us to do? Or I'm not even sure what to make the motion on right now.
Correct.
I think the motion would be to accept the closing agreement, and that that's issued by or on behalf of ORS from the IRS.
That's it.
Kevin, would you agree?
Yes, that's it.
Hey, Angina, is it?
And Matthew Herman here with us tonight. Couple, before we get to the actual supports that are available to students, I wanted to share what's going to be new for 2021. Currently, we have posted a student support specialist for our K-5 buildings. This will be a resource shared among our 3 elementary buildings, providing family outreach to reduce barriers to instruction, which has been a big deal in 2021. But I'll say this, I mean, that's always an issue. That's not exclusive to 2020. It's just been enhanced because of everything going on. Also developing student support plans to nurture success and independence in students. So we're trying to build students to where they're able to do things more independently on their own, knowing a lot of times there are barriers that lie in front of them. For our 6-8, we currently have posted a behavior interventionist position who will be joining Ms. Carroll. This person will be supporting qualified students in need of regular behavioral support in the school setting, also supporting healthy and consistent behaviors that allow for learning at a higher level. Also at the middle school, this is not a new person, but a return to the middle school. Mrs. Weiss will be returning to support qualified students at risk of failing to develop healthy academic habits. And Ms. Weiss also does an excellent job of providing family outreach to support communication and healthy academic habits in the home setting. New this year, who was just recently hired, hope that you'll be hearing more about this person, is our academic support coach. And that person will be providing family outreach to support communication and healthy academic habits in the home setting, supporting qualified students at risk of failing to develop healthy academic habits, and also supporting regular attendance and reduction of barriers to instruction. Lastly, we are joining the county consortium. There was a grant that was filed by the county to bring in Graduation Alliance for grades 9 through 12. And that is an additional outreach program. These individuals even go out to contact students who have dropped out as recently as this past spring before schools were shut down. So if we have students that did not show back up, or we know that they exited, and we did not see that they joined another school district, they will be eligible to be contacted through this partnership. So we're looking to, again, reduce barriers, get students in school, and at that point, once we have them in school, build healthy habits and develop them into lifelong learners. as successfully as possible. So I thought that was newsworthy, and I didn't know if you had seen all that in our news and notes coming up, but all valuable information, I believe. Talking about additional outside resources available to our Pennfield students. These are with referral, working with parents as well, is Grace Health Behavioral Health Consultants. This is available to qualified and referred students at our 3 elementary buildings. And also Summit Point Behavioral Health Services is available and has been available upon referral for qualified students in grades 6 through 12 at the middle school and high school. So let's move on to our group that's here today, our counselors and our behavior interventionists. We're talking about first virtual accessibility modes. These are just the modes in which students can access support. So these aren't the actual supports, but just the modes in which they can access. A big one this year has been the Panther portal. And we have counselor pages on the Panther portal. So many of our students, all of our students are probably already accessing the Panther portal, but there are counselor pages there as well. An additional mode has been the Google form to remotely check in with students virtually, individual virtual sessions, virtual remote check-ins, and counselor letters. I should back up. We did send out a counselor letter to families to explain the modes available and how to access those, because I know that always comes up too. Well, I didn't know. And even with letters, we understand that sometimes that is missed, but we certainly do our best to bring awareness to how students can access these different ports. Virtual services. Now this is actually what is being provided to students. Second step, social emotional learning lessons. And I'm gonna put either one or both. Ms. Parmalee or Ms. Carroll, could you talk a little bit about second step and exactly what types of lessons those are and how they're being provided?
Sure, I can go first. At my grade level, so I'm working with kindergarten through 2nd grade. Second step is 4 units. The first unit talks about identifying feelings. So these young kids are learning about what feelings look like on other people's faces, what to watch for to figure out how someone else is feeling, and teaching them how to have empathy and compassion about other people. They also then learn about their own feelings and what big feelings feel like in their bodies and how to recognize that. And then we learn some strategies to calm those down when they get so big that they're in our way. And then the last unit is on problem solving. So we take all those things that we've learned up to that point and we talk about, okay, so what do we do when a problem comes up? What are some rational ways that we can solve those problems? We try to get that done. We get that done, by the end of 2nd grade, the lessons are ready to take them right into the 3rd grade lesson. So I always tell my kids at the end of 2nd grade, your counselor at the next building, they're going to expect you to know how to do this, this, and this from the problem solving steps, so that they can go on from there. So it's a good program. The kindergarten and 1st grade, mine has puppets that the kids love. We use songs that go with it, videos and pictures, and it's relatively engaging. So it's been a challenge a little bit this year because for safety reasons, I haven't been able to go into every classroom, but in a normal year, I'm in every classroom once a week teaching these lessons. And so this year I'm doing them on videotape. I've got my puppets out in my office and I'm doing my thing behind the video camera and then sending them out to the classes. And then I also have them available on my Panther portal page so that if anyone is absent and they miss it, they can go back and access that content later.
Awesome. At the middle school, and that's the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, our teachers teach the social emotional learning piece, second step, through our Pride Time. So it's a 30-minute everyday opportunity. They started out with positive mindsets, really hitting hard about the value of making mistakes and moving on from those mistakes and those words of I can. We were advised by the second step, and Roshan and I are very involved in an organization of counselors across the nation. And we were advised to not do our anti-bullying unit until we were back more primarily in-house. So we are in our third unit right now, which is regulating your emotions. Lots of stress lessons in that one. Perfect for this time. Looking at how to make decisions. And then we will be going into the anti-bullying. We don't have puppets and we don't have songs, but our kids are fully engaged. Lots of great discussion. It's been real positive. It's the updated version, and the staff have really enjoyed this second year of this updated version of Second Step.
Thank you so much. I'll get back to our presentation. Now, remote recess, and I know that this is a newer feature, and I believe it was entered by the elementary. So just briefly, I don't know if Tim or Roshan or Michael or Todd, if you want to talk about remote recess, any one of you.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. You know, being new to the 3-5 building, I knew just that time with friends was lacking in the remote setting. So you know, I once or twice a week I was just, you know, putting it out there to the teachers. You know, here's where I'll be. We're gonna get together, play a game, hang out, just talk. You know, just give the kids that opportunity to, you know, more or less be out at recess, only, you know, at in front of their computer. So you know, it's been a big hit. Definitely have a handful of kids that come consistently. Trying to find the right time where, you know, the maximum amount of kids can come, and, you know, going back and forth between the just, you know, the handful of virtual to all virtual to now back into the so it's a ever moving target that I'm, you know, finding those kids that want it and are a part of it, and it's been a fun time for sure.
Thank you. And some of these are a little more self-explanatory, so we won't ask for elaboration for each one. Virtual lessons, you might have heard Ms. Carroll kind of talk about that a little bit, mindfulness and emotion management strategies. One-to-one virtual sessions and meetings have been available to students. So even though we are doing the lessons themselves, there is one-to-one time available to students. Counselor resource sites, we talked about hosting those on the portal themselves. And I gotta really just, you know, give some shout outs to some of the pages that have been put up there. Very nice work, fun to access, and even Bitmojis have been used. I believe Mr. Herman, but maybe it was Ms. Parmalee. The first ones that I saw with those did a great job of bringing those in, and just again, very very engaging and helpful resources those are. Check-ins, we'll be talking about those a little bit more. Check-ins are a popular way of just getting students started the right way, but also just making sure that they're doing okay and doing well. And then finally, as mentioned before, referral services are available for Grace Health, Wraparound, and Summit Point. Wraparound I didn't discuss so much, but Wraparound is a very helpful organization who pairs individuals with families to help those families out. And really it can be anything from organizing the household itself to just providing very positive supports that are just helpful to students on a day-to-day, night-to-night basis. In-person supports, these are things that you may be more familiar with because we've had them for a number of years, but just want to kind of point out some of the differences, and also that they are back now that we have in-person learning. Check-in, check-out, both Mr. Bates and Mr. Morgan do an excellent job of this. Would one of you want to talk about check-in, check-out very briefly?
Sure, I will. My check-in, check-out program is a something I do with kids who've had chronic behavior problems. We set up a parent meeting to get it started so that everybody knows what's going on and are all on the same page. Kids start off their day with me in the morning doing a check-in. When they first get there, they pick up their point sheet. I give them a pep talk, you know, make sure that they're focused on their goals. I usually have, on average, 2 goals. Once in a great while, 3, but most of the time I just have 2 goals for kids to work on in their check-in, check-out. They go through the day. I check in on them during lunch, in the classroom sometimes. And then at the end of the day, they bring their point sheet completed back to me to see if they've reached their goal. And then I provide them with some kind of reinforcement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one-to-one meetings also available in person. Teacher admin referrals, what you may see in the classroom can be referred to a counselor or behavior interventionist. There is a bit more of a process for, you can be referred to a behavior interventionist, but to receive the type of support that Todd was talking about there with check-in, check-out, that might be more of a school support, student support team type decision, but certainly referrals can be made from any student's teacher. Referral services, again, these are just like we talked about in the virtual setting, are also available in person. And also we have student support team meetings. Additional outreach, these are other ways that we're reaching families and students. Family letters, Google Forms have been very popular. Parent survey and student quarterly survey, as well as phone calls. Now, I believe Ms. Avery and Mr. Herman mentioned the student quarterly survey. Could you briefly explain that or what that looks like or how that works? Or was I wrong?
Oops. Thanks, Trevor. So Trevor, explain to me what with the quarterlies, because I'm not Matt.
Oh, I thought that was one of you that entered that for the quarterly survey. Was that somebody else?
That might have been somebody else.
You know, both Tim Simpson and I have done that, and that's a Google form check-in with our kids, folks, where we want to know how are they feeling. And we always end, we try to keep it, and Tim, I'll see if you shake your head with me, at like 3 or 4 little statements, how they're feeling, how things are going at home. And then we ask if they would like to have a chance to meet with us. And we get really positive feedback from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Sorry, Lisa, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
And I saw a big
That's
thumbs
all right.
up from Tim. So, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
All right. And that concludes. Like I said, it was short and sweet, but again, very important that we share what it is that we're doing and also how to access those supports. And again, here, I'll stop presenting. If there's any questions, I mean, again, the basis was what support looks like in person versus virtual. And I open it up to any questions that you may have.
So Trevor, your whole program, everybody's program really sounds very good. My concern, and I think some of our board members have expressed this, is can you describe what it would typically look like if we have a child who's perhaps bipolar and is going through difficulty right now during the school year, and what would be our typical way that provided parents provide that information to us? What would be the typical process that they would be going through in order to get assistance?
Yeah, so we actually this entire group just a few weeks ago completed youth mental health first aid. Now, I mean, the scenario you give is it could be like that, but there's also other scenarios that would fall into that. And you may find that, you know, students just, like you said, maybe we already know from the home that they have needs, but maybe it's not even that obvious. Maybe the better scenario would be a student who is experiencing a crisis that it hasn't even been brought to the attention of, you know, a medical expert or the family themselves. So I guess I would open it up to our floor if anybody kind of wants to talk about some of the processes of how a referral or how that support comes to be, I think is what Dr. Corpola is asking for. What does that process look like in your building? And I open it to anybody.
I can jump in there.
Thank you.
At the high school building, this is Matthew Herman, counselor at the high school. I came a little late. I was at the early college program. It comes us through teachers, through parents, through students themselves, or friends of students that we reach out that say their friends struggling, and usually that turns around and we call the student down and sort of do an assessment. The first aid that Mr. Vo was talking about, and we figure out, is it something that we can handle within house, or is it over our heads? I know enough to get myself in trouble. So usually once I know I'm going to get myself in trouble, I reach out to Summit Point, Christine Garfield, who happens to be in the middle school and the high school with us, or outside insurance, get the parents involved, find some source of mental health that student would need for the social emotional side of things.
One of the first things that we do is we make sure that we're calling parents and that we're involving them in this process. And so that they're aware of, maybe what the struggles are. And sometimes the students are really good about self-reporting what's happening and what's going on. So, but Christine is also very helpful with that process.
Yeah, a big part of the youth mental health first aid, honestly, is about being a good listener, making sure to not express judgment, making sure that students have accessibility to additional supports. There were certain key points. So like Mr. Herman said, it's not always about come in, let me fix your problem. A lot of times it's come in, let me listen to you. Let me, let's talk about this. And again, you're assessing along the while. Does the student need additional supports or resources, and being able to connect them and making sure that their network of support is available to them, whether that's parents, like Miss Avery said, or anybody else.
Did that help you, Dr. Corpalez? Is that what you were looking for? As school counselors, we are not in a position where we diagnose. So we listen, and then as you mentioned, a student with bipolar, that would have had to have come from a medical professional making that diagnosis, and then we work along with them and be part of their treatment plan.
Yes, very good. Thank you all.
I have a question that goes along with that. At what point is our district accountable to reach out if a student comes in confidentiality? So at what point do we include the parents or not include the parents in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Does anybody want to take that one?
Mrs. Fortin, we are required, anytime a student presents to us that they are of any danger to themselves or to others, we are required to contact a parent. So that is a real basic common line right there. Anytime there's of any danger, we are required to reach out to parents. We're also mandated reporters. So if there's any thought of any type of abuse, we must report to CPS.
And that's for all the staff, actually. Coaches, staff, administration.
I have a question for you, if that's all right. You've mentioned how the students self-assess through the Google form, and you mentioned like friends can report and things. Do you have any means of rating them, like having your eyes on them, like through the teachers to make sure that nobody's falling through the cracks? Like, do you use the DESA rating on kids or anything?
Somebody want to take that question?
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Oh, no, I thought it was kind of in response to some of the things you mentioned.
And
that's why
Mr.
I kind of stopped there.
was laughing
Yeah.
at that because he knows I do talk a lot. Thank you. We don't, Sarah, we don't have the DESA that we use. Sounds interesting. We don't, but the staff are truly our front lines. We are so fortunate that the teachers see and know if something is out of whack, out of kilter, and they are great at texting or emailing us and asking us to check in with kids. Boy, they do a phenomenal job of keeping us connected with them. Thanks for asking that.
I think you gave us something to check out. Appreciate that.
And I would like to add, I mean, we you know, social emotional learning from the minute we have the kids virtually or in our building is something that we're working on all the time, observing it's sort of embedded in everything that we do. You know, and working on those soft skills with their relationships with their own self, you know, how am I doing? How am I feeling? And so, and I concur with Connie, we have ears and eyes everywhere in our building, 24/7.
I love the idea of our check-in, check-out program. I can't remember what grade levels are that. Is that available to?
Yeah, so ideally, I shouldn't say ideally. Typically, that's a K-5 structure. However, I don't know. I would probably lean to. That's what I was going to say. I would say at middle school has been utilizing that as well. Now 9-12 check in, check out. Does that happen as well? Maybe not. Not
We
as
do
much.
it more on an individual basis. We do have students that we check in with weekly, or some of them, you know, more often than that. But it's not a structure that we do every day.
And K8, it is a structure. It'd be a regular time that student is checking in, building that relationship. Like Mr. Morgan mentioned, it's defined as far as what we are discussing, what we're going over, just to help that student be successful each day.
Trevor, do you have like a percentage of the amount of children that participate in that? Just to give us some sort of idea, like, you know, is it 1 or 2 kids, 20 kids, you know?
Last year I had 15 kids that participated in
So
mine.
that'd be at Dunlap, 15 that did that. Now that doesn't mean that go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
Most of them were 3rd and 4th grade. I try to get them in the 3rd and 4th grade and get them in through the program. By the time they're in the 5th grade, generally they don't need it anymore. So that would be about 15 out of the 3rd and 4th grade, which probably is about 300.
Yeah,
300
roughly.
Yeah, I would say.
That's a great program. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? And we do appreciate your time because I know you have a packed agenda. So, I mean, this is, it's a big deal, but we appreciate it.
No, we appreciate your guys' time.
Okay.
Trevor, anything?
No, go ahead. Go ahead,
I was
Trevor.
just going to add, Trevor, anything else to add?
No. Like I said, I just wanted to, we've been waiting to come in here and present and again, appreciate it. And with that being said, I just want to offer and put out a big thank you to our team that's here tonight. You know, going beyond those school hours, I mean, we can't ask them to do it. You know what? They just do it. They do, because, you know, they care. They really do. So I really appreciate all of you and have a good night. If you haven't had dinner, go get dinner. And you want to come back and check us out on YouTube, feel free.
Thank you very much, guys. Kevin, do you have anything else to add on this?
Yeah, you know, when it comes to our budget in the guidance department, we are #1 in Battle Creek, student per guidance support. We're #1, and that was done before I got here. So the district somewhere along the way made it a purposeful effort to say that we want to put more into the support of kids in Pennfield schools. And we're adding, as you would have noticed that Trevor was sharing earlier on, that we're adding more personnel. And we, with that, the budget actually supports those needs. So that goes a long way when it comes to where a focus is when it comes to the district that was put in place, as I said, before I got here. And now we're just adding to that because that support is well needed with our kids and appreciated by the staff in the district.
If I might add, the thing that I don't know how many years ago and how many superintendents ago, but to me, it was the most frustrating board meeting that we may have had, or many of them that we may have had, when somebody would be coming before the board for expulsion, and their mental health issues were missed or weren't being shared with the school district. It was just really difficult. So it's really good to hear that we're doing this, and it's a very comprehensive approach to things.
Very good point. Very good point. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Coppola.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin, for that presentation.
Yep. I want to also thank that team. They do an awesome job. I mean, they go on and beyond the just the call of the hours. And Trevor does a great job working with that team and bringing this information together. So I definitely want to give the kudos out to them and their hard work.
Absolutely. Moving on, 3.03, superintendent calendar discussion. This item is on the agenda for today for discussion. I have personally asked to have Kevin's weekly calendar uploaded each and every Friday in order to better ourselves when it comes to the superintendent review, taking what Jay Bennett suggested on the superintendent's calendar being a very good viewpoint to answer a lot of the questions on the superintendent's evaluation. Kevin has asked to bring this to the board and have this as a board discussion and ultimately a board vote on whether we want to formally ask as one board for this to be done.
Well, let me go one step further, Jeff. The question, the reason it's coming before the board is that it was Jay that mentioned it because it was used before as evidence in the actual evaluation tool. So just asking me for my actual calendar, then I need the board to say exactly what it is that you're using the calendar for to measure in a tool. I use an example as what Dr. Corpola did. I want to say it was last year, actually my first year, when he mentioned the fact that, hey, how would we know that Kevin's actually going to some of these performing arts events or athletic events, or is actually attending some of these meetings? And then I said, do you want me to bring you the agenda? Do you want me to bring you the actual brochure from the actual choir concert? Do you want me to bring you the actual ticket? I mean, so, and then Jay mentioned, hey, you know, you could ask him for his calendar and it'd be right there on the calendar. Well, that was a part of a communication line item on the actual superintendent's evaluation. What you don't do is just take it and then start backtracking as to what part you're going to use it for in the evaluation tool. So my question was to the members, exactly what is it that you want to use my calendar when it comes to the superintendent evaluation tool? Because my calendar becomes a piece of evidence. Also, Jeff mentioned, well, wait a minute, Kevin, you've done it before. You know, there's, you know, what's the trust in the fact that you've done it before? And I said, well, exactly what do you mean? And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. It was, well, if someone is asking a question about if he was actually doing something, I can say, yeah, he was busy because I can see it right here on his calendar. That is not what a calendar is used for. Just like a PowerPoint, if I'm doing a PowerPoint, it shows certain things I'm going to discuss, but it doesn't show every hour what I'm doing or everything I'm going to say in a PowerPoint. So this is being brought to the board to say, based on what Jay Bennett from the MASB shared, and based on my conversation with Jeff, what items, what line items in the tool that you want to use my calendar as an evidence on that part of the tool.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I remember that being useful when we had Tim share his calendar, and all he did was share his Google Calendar. He didn't upload it or send it or anything. You can just share your Google Calendar. But I don't remember exactly which line items. So my question is, Kevin, do you have some of those evaluation lines that you think it would be helpful to us to use it for?
Yeah, in the actual communication lines of that tool, this is where when Jay was mentioning the superintendent goals, and we were talking about the use of that tool, that was used in the communication part, and it was everything from being visible to attending events to there were quite a few things in the communication piece. So for me, I would say yes if you're using it for those pieces. But what we're not going to do is come back, say 4 months from now, and we're doing a formal update in June and say, well, yeah, well, I see right here that you're not doing this. I'm like, well, that wasn't a part that you wanted me to put on the calendar. So is that something you want me to do? Because now we're 6 months in to what's going to be an 11-month evaluation.
So I see what you mean. What you're talking about is you don't necessarily keep all your details on your calendar. So you want to make sure that what we want to see is actually being put on your calendar.
Correct. And if I do it backwards, it is you're telling me what evidence you want to use my calendar for.
Right. I personally think that that communication piece was the most helpful because it and again I'm just going by past memory of it was helpful to see when they were attending Lions Clubs meetings or when they were attending athletic events. But you're right, you need to know now so that you're actually putting those on your calendar as appointments or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and I do think some of that discussion from Jay was the difference in the evaluation tool from being effective to being highly effective. Mm-hmm. And I think Jay was saying the kind of the dividing line of that is someone who's proactive versus reactive. So I think, sharing your schedule with us would be a time to shine for you where, okay, we could see if you're being proactive or reactive.
And Tim, I can appreciate that. However, seeing how my calendar is a proactive, if you're looking for something that is not there, you would definitely find it. I'm just saying before we get to that point, I need the board to tell me exactly what it is that you want to see so we can point as evidence to that part on the actual evaluation form.
I think to have that kind of level of specificity, we would have to have that evaluation tool in our hand and say, okay, it's applicable to this column and this column and this column. But I remember you saying when we were on live with Jay that you live and die by that schedule. So everything you do is in that schedule or you don't do it. So
that came when we were talking about the communication. Then we're talking about the communication. And if you're looking at the tool in front of you, then I can point to those points that this was used for that. But there were 6 other areas on that tool that my schedule may not have anything to touch on within that area. So that's why you are correct. When having that discussion, you can see those things in communication, and then you see all these other things. You go, oh my gosh, what is this? Oh, and you're right. It would be, he's doing a lot more than what's there. However, if it's something that's not there, then that becomes a question of, well, Kevin, you can't say you're doing that because it's not even right here on your calendar. You could, but that's where the trying to specify exactly what the board members are saying becomes evaluative. It's like my evaluating administrators. I don't come back to them after the fact and go, well, I was expecting you to do. And they go, well, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? Nope, I can't really mark them down because professionally, that's not how evaluations are done.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but I'm taking that as an assumption of what you think that we're going to use the calendar for, and I don't think we would do that. This would also give us the opportunity once again to look at your calendar and look at. I currently have the evaluation sheet in front of us to where the board can come together and specifics that the board set for you, in the past, as far as attending X amount of after school activities, asking you to attend this, and so on and so forth. I think this would better us to be able to say, hey, Kevin, this might be a good idea to, in this case, attend, something. And again, ultimately, once we get to November, I mean, there's a lot of information on there that would, hey, Kevin's meeting with administrators every day. He's doing this. He's doing awesome. He's meeting with Trevor. He's, answers a lot of questions on a lot of categories on that evaluation.
Right. So can I just kind of, Jeff, think
Absolutely.
about, I hear what you're saying, and I also hear what Kevin's saying, and maybe what would be helpful is to so if we want Kevin's calendar to be used as evidence to show that he's having effective communication with his administrative staff, or if we want his calendar to be showing that he's having involved with the community and he's attending events. So there are a lot of those different goals. So I think that what he might not have on his calendar is having all of the staff administrators evaluation narrative finished, or some of those other goals that are in different sections.
Correct.
So I think that's kind of what Kevin's saying is there's lots of different pieces of evidence we can give for certain areas. The calendar is just one of them. It's just one option. So if we can tell him what we want the calendar to be evidence for, he'll make sure it's on the calendar. And then the other areas will be looking for different pieces of evidence.
That's considered those clear expectations, Abby. That's exactly what that is. Because if we have clear expectations, like we do with administrators, building principals with their teachers, they try to make clear expectations as to what it is they're looking for so that they can work in that area. Well, I do the same thing with building principals, and now the board is doing the same thing with me. We're just trying to make sure that we're clear with those expectations. But as Tim said, all the extra, because there's a lot of extra that's going to be there anyway. But I need to know what it is, even if it means the board has to go back and scratch up the actual document that it's superintendent evaluation tool, and then send it to me. And then I'm able to compile it. And then we say, hey, this is exactly what every board member is saying they want to see. And maybe there's some of the same. But we did that with Jay when setting my goals when it was in February of 2020. But we didn't do that this time because we just did the training with him. We didn't actually go through what in there. Now, if you look at the last 2 years or the last 2 years evaluation tools, there's examples of areas where he even made notes that said the board would like to see Kevin working on these areas. And I'm saying I can go with those, but I need the board to actually know that's the same thing. Because if I start down that trail and the board is going, no, we wanted you going this way, then that's not a clear expectation.
Dawn?
I understand what Kevin's saying, but I also feel that sharing that calendar is going to give the board a tool to be proactive and say, Kevin, I didn't see this and just wondered how that was going.
Well, that's what the work in progress in that Google Doc does now.
Okay.
That the Google Doc has everything that I'm working on, and what's being completed then comes out on my superintendent comments. But if it's still a work in progress, those things I'm working on are on there. And there's more there than what actually is reflected on my calendar, because sometimes I go back after someone has called me, say it's a parent or run into a teacher in a hallway or an administrator that stops me, and I'll go back and add it. So there's the other way. So yeah,
I used to have to keep my time by 15-minute increments, and my calendar, as detailed as I could keep it, it gave me hints of how to fill it out, but it didn't tell the whole story. So I get what you mean.
No.
I also get what you're saying, Dawn.
I mean, it's impossible to tell a whole story of someone's day.
Right.
I don't think that that's what Jeff is looking for either.
So
Sarah,
If I might add. Oh,
hold
go
on.
ahead, Sarah.
Sarah has her hand up. Sarah.
Yep.
Oh, Sarah's got her hand up. Good.
I try to be proper. I just I'm thinking at this as a from a perspective of the professional evaluation system and cycle and how it works. And typically you would ask for all the details if somebody was new in their first year. So your whole calendar, give us your whole calendar. Or if they had had an ineffective rating. So Kevin's now to the point that he's not brand new. We've seen what he can do. And the board in November gave him a good rating. So at what point can we trust him to not give us everything, but just give us what we need?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it would be like in other careers and professional evaluations.
Dr. Corpola.
I think, Kevin, the easiest way to quantify what we're looking for would be in your calendar would be the simple things, the meetings with other organizations, the meeting with teachers, where we can see that you're there for an hour, you're there for 2 hours with any of the clubs, or anything having to do with the upcoming bond if we go ahead with that. It's that kind of very easily quantifiable type of thing, going to extracurricular activities, that I think really works for calendars. I can't say that you should go to a meeting for 15 minutes and then you got a dentist appointment, that you shouldn't list the activity that you went to, because dentist appointments happen. But it's that kind of thing that's the most easily way of quantifying the way in which we look at your calendar and your evaluation.
And I would just add, Dr. Corpola, if that's the case, and that's what the members of the board is saying, then here's the calendar. But we're not going to come back in June and say, oh, wait a minute, under the instructional leadership part right here where it says distributive leadership, you didn't do any of that. And I'm going, yes, I did. It's not showing on my calendar. What's showing on my calendar is what was spelled out here at the board, and some of the other stuff, So that's a clear expectation, not just where it's just left open, because left open is left open for
interpretation.
Interpretation. That's the word I'm looking for. I said critique, but it's open for interpretation.
Tim, you got your hands up?
Yeah, I think between Sarah and Craig and then what Kevin said, I think it's kind of worked itself out since I put my hand up. But I think having that rubric in hand to give Kevin clear and concise, hey, this is what we want, this is where we're going. I think that's fair. And obviously, Kevin, we're looking to fairly evaluate you, so we want the data. So anything you provide us is obviously going to help. And, it's not a question if you're working or not. I drove by twice last week and your car was there past 7. I almost texted you to tell you to go home. But, so just having the data is what we're looking for.
And I appreciate that, Tim, because, again, if that tool's in front of you and we're having this discussion, then yes, that's going to be reflected on the schedule. And it also helps me with what areas that you emphasize as a board that you would like to see me working in. It is again, I just can't say this enough, but coming back in June for a formal update and saying, this is not here. And then my going, wait a minute, y'all didn't bring that up. Was that a concern? Because I'm going to cover a lot on every part of the actual tool itself.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I think we're all aware when we get to that point, we can ask for more evidence if there's something that the calendar doesn't supply us the
Correct.
proper
Yeah.
information. We know how to ask for more information. Dana, you had your hand up.
Sorry, I don't really need my hand up anymore. I was just going to agree with Craig completely. Just it's of why he specified. I know that at any time, like my calendar, for example, my boss can log in at any time, look at my calendar, and he does. He logs on all the time. So it's just how it is. And the job that I'm in, like people can log into my calendar. Anyone from my boss and up can log in and look at my personal calendar, what I've got on there at any time. So I don't think we're like looking to say, gotcha. We're just looking to say, okay, this is what he's doing here. This is what he's doing there. I completely agree with what Craig and Jeff are saying. I guess what I'm saying. Sorry.
Thank you, Dana. Craig?
No comment.
You had your hand up, sir. I was calling on you.
I
know you're used to.
It was a flip of the finger.
Oh, well, thank you.
Not that finger.
So the only thing I have to add is the obvious. 4 new board members in the past 2.5 months. The trust, the accountability behind it, also, along with adding on to what Craig was stating as a very good point. If there's something we see, Kevin, I think we're all in agreement of asking, presenting those items to you. Could you look into possibly doing this or whatever? I think we can look at that on a future event. Nor would we go months on end without asking questions. I can't speak for boards previous, but my assumption with the amount of emails and questions, this board asks a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very much in communication with you probably each and every day.
So, Jeff, should we put together some kind of action plan to say, hey, let's look at the rubric for evaluation, pick out the detail we want, and give that to Kevin? Or are we just going to ask Kevin for his total schedule? What are we doing?
It's a matter of asking for his schedule to be shared.
Okay.
And I'm going back to what we talked about earlier, is that as a board, that the board sits down with that document and actually points to exactly what it is that you would like to look at on the actual calendar. And then I have no problem with sharing it once you do that. And then, yes, if there's something else that comes along, you go, oh, well, what about this? Because you're thinking of something else. But as far as the beginning, we need some clear expectations. And I'm not in previous boards, previous districts. I've been at this for some time, and things could go awry real quick because it protects the board as well as it supports the board and the actual employee when those clear expectations are laid out. Now, I've already heard Sarah, Tim, and Craig point towards certain things that are on the actual document itself. Now, if that is the case, I mean, it's not like you can go out and talk to each other away from this meeting and determine what those pieces are. You'd actually have to come back and actually have the document in front and say, here's what I would like to see, here's what I would like to see, and then the board members, then we're able to compile that, and then you're able to see it. But yeah, I wouldn't even ask you to go out and try to have that conversation because it could be a violation of an Open Meetings Act. So we may as well do that here at the table. Next month is the first informal update in March. So that's the first informal update, and the first formal update is in June. So if we're going to do that, then maybe March needs to be to where we actually have, I would say bring Jay back, because Jay would be the person that could actually point to the actual piece. Or we can do that either at the committee of a whole, or as the board was think maybe it takes a little more time, then maybe that's going to be done with a totally different meeting.
Abby, you have your hand up.
I was just gonna kind of suggest what Kevin just suggested, is that I do think there is that last step of the evaluation that we didn't do yet, and that is to go through and identify different pieces of evidence that we would like to see for each of the areas in that evaluation. And we have always done that before. So I think that might be a good way to do that evaluation next month. The check-in is to actually go through, everybody would need to spend a little time before then and writing down what types of evaluation they might be thinking of looking for each section. And that way the calendar will be there, but there will also be a lot of other pieces of evidence that we're going to ask Kevin to provide. And having said that, Kevin, I remember doing that before, and I think that is probably a logical next step. That way you'll have the whole thing, not just the calendar, but everything else we want, and you'll know what you need to keep on your calendar also.
Yes.
Thank you, Abby. Nobody else? Yeah, I mean, in layman terms, we can do all the training and such and go from there. But sometimes it's a matter of if you don't know what you're looking for, then you don't know. This is going to avoid any assuming. This is going to avoid a lot of stuff in the long run. And I can't help but think of why being redundant on asking for the schedule.
That tool actually at the end of it has a lot of examples of different types of evidence. So I think you can, it's really easy to use. You'll be able to just look at it and understand what kinds of evidence they're suggesting for each of the sections. I don't think we actually have to have Jay in to do that. I think we can do it ourselves, actually.
Yeah.
If everybody can spend a little time going through it ahead of time, it won't take that long.
Craig?
Yes, I did mean to raise my hand that time. I agree with everything Abby said.
Thank you, sir. Anyone have anything else? Craig, you got your hand back up, or did you double click?
It was a double click.
All right. Would we like to motion to move this to next week then? For a vote?
I'll motion that we move this next week for a vote.
Well, it is
a schedule. Is that what you're saying?
It is a committee as a whole. So the only reason a vote was done at the beginning was to table something onto the agenda, but you wouldn't be going for a vote as much as saying you table it for whatever time, right?
So do I need to motion to table it until next week for the agenda?
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay, yeah.
Second that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Sarah, if you would, please.
Yeah, this time I'm gonna start with Craig.
Aye.
Dana?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Abby?
Could you read the motion one more time, please?
The motion is to table this discussion to next week's board meeting.
Thank you. Yes.
And Sarah, yes. Sorry, I hit mute.
Thank you very much. We will move this to next week's agenda. All right, 3.04 secondary schools in-person / virtual learning update. Kevin and I spoke earlier in the week on just giving us an update on where we're at. We've been 2 and 3 weeks now back in person. Kind of give us an idea of what that looks like of in-person percentages versus virtual, and any pros and cons to feedback that we've received.
Yeah, so this is, and I want to make sure there's 2 different types of updates. There's the secondary schools in-person virtual learning update. This is the one that says that there's 5 days a week for K-5 and there's a virtual component, but there was 3 days a week for secondary and 2 days virtually. And the update that we posted for teachers to help support virtual students on a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 2 hours from 3 to 5 o'clock each day. So there are, and again, we don't know if we're going to have teachers that are going to be able to get into that area and actually apply for those positions. We're hoping that they will, because they would be doing in-person teaching during the day, and right after the end of the school day, this is middle school and high school, then they are there for 2 hours to help the virtual students who only have 2 days a week. Now, there are also the opportunity that it's trying to support virtual students, but I'm sure there are going to be teachers that are going to be also helping with their in-person students, but this is set up to give support more so for those virtual students. This is also becomes a question that was asked before, which was when we come back in February, and I want to say Abby might have been the one that mentioned it, that the first options that were out there were 2 days a week for in-person. It was 3 days it was 2 days for the students. And then it was, no, we want 4 days a week. And then we started talking about 4 days a week for in-person. And then Dana made the recommendation to do 3 days a week, which was Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. That I would come back with a report in February as to how is it going based on the fact, are we trying to move to 5 days a week with in-person for secondary? And if so, what would or could that look like? So that's what I'm getting ready to share. Okay? Just to make sure I bring everybody up to speed. The only way to go 5 days a week with in-person secondary is the students who have 2 days a week with the teachers that are teaching that subject area. They would no longer have those students. And all virtual students will have to go to E2020, and the after school 3 days are teachers to support students who are in E2020. And I would say that that would be a gross misconduct of educating kids to take them out from their teachers that they've had this semester and tell them the last 9 weeks, you no longer have that teacher. We're going to put you in credit recovery, which is E2020. That's the only way that you can go 5 days, because we don't have an alternative school. And I'll just say this, I am looking at what virtual learning would look like for K-12, which I'm bringing back in March, because that's a part of my superintendent goals, which we're going to hear about in a minute, is what are some of those programs and opportunities if it comes to where they need it in the fall, students who parents want them to stay virtual. I share with you now, based on the data coming out of the health department and these variants that are coming out, that the kids who have 3 days of in-person now and the kids with 2 days of virtual, but we're adding virtual support on those other 3 days, that we continue on this same path and we come back each month with an update to see how the progress is moving forward. But that we do not move into a change here in February to change it in March for the last marking period. That would be my recommendation at this point, based on the fact that we are just 2 or 3 weeks in with trying to get the kids who are in person and trying to move forward.
Thank you for your feedback, Kevin. Anybody have any questions for Kevin?
And I raised my real hand.
I gotcha. Go ahead, Abby.
So Kevin, I guess, how are the 3 days a week going? How's it going?
Okay, we do have, and should I say, we have challenges with kids who are wearing masks, but they're not wearing them correctly. And staff is steady working with them to try to do that same thing of, if you're chewing gum and we don't just write out, say, I told you not to chew gum, here's a referral. Trying to work with the kid to say, you got to keep the mask above your mouth and above your nose. We have more kids doing it the right way than we have kids doing it the wrong way. And I would say percentage-wise, I've heard nothing but 90% plus where kids are being very compliant. And I can see for myself when I'm going in. There is the uncomfortable feeling that comes with, and I'll start with elementary. There are some classrooms to where there's not 3 feet between around the kids. So, 6 feet is out, but they're closer. Although the teacher is still in there trying to make it work with the kids. And the kids are doing what they're asked to do. Again, these are little kids. Even as we talk about going through at the 3rd to 5th graders also. It is the secondary that is causing more concern. We haven't had the situation to occur, but we are we're hoping we don't, but we're thinking it's going to happen sooner than later. Kids are eating lunch and they have to lower their mask to eat lunch. And they're assigned with spaces at their tables. But the kids are having conversations. They're students. They're going to have conversation. And it's without the mask. So you can't tell them, I need you to eat, but I don't want you talking to the kid across from you or the one sitting 3 feet away from you. So that becomes a concern because even with the adults who are working with the students during their lunch, students who finish lunch, they're still talking. Yeah, but I'm still drinking too. It's concerning because of the amount of students that we have at the lunches. And again, very respectful kids when you start talking about exactly what you're asking them to do. They're doing what they can, but this is a part of the work that the district staff is trying to go through daily and the stressors of having that situation and knowing that if one student becomes positive or a teacher, it's going to impact not just the classrooms that the child goes to, not just the lunch that the child is in, or the bus that they ride, because it's going to take 48 hours to figure out contact tracing, and the schools will go down for 48 hours until we figure it out. Because you can't just say, yep, it's all the kids in just those 5 classes. Okay, well, there's a bus, there's a lunch, and there's the specials classes. Those are things that the teachers are constantly trying to work with each other on. And as far as the enthusiasm about the kids being back, that level is very, very high. And the kids show the appreciation for the opportunities. It is the staff who we haven't really gotten through the first vaccinations yet. There are high levels of stress for some, and then there's others going, it is what it is, but that's a very small amount of those teachers. I will say this now, which I was going to say in my ending comments. When it comes to teachers and district staff, my job is to make sure that they not just do the job, but they go beyond just doing the job. And that's where my communication and my work with the staff comes in. So the question which was months ago and has come up, is, are the teachers going to do? Well, that's already been answered. The teachers are doing what they love to do, which is teaching. So my job is continue to communicate and work with them so that they know we're trying to do everything from PPE to talking with students and talking with parents, saying, you know, I can't speak for all the administrators, but we haven't had more than a handful of students that have just flat out said, I'm not going to do it. But we have had some adults, and we've had shortages, and I'm having conversation with transportation right now because of, I'm just not going to wear a mask. I'm out. That patience that we have with our parents to understand, we don't want to leave kids out in the cold. We don't want to have to send a text message saying this route is going to be an hour delay. It's happening because there are adults who are also stressing about having to wear a mask and be on the bus with more kids than what's in a classroom. It's like saying 2 or 3 classrooms of kids, and have to safely transport them to and from school. But they're out there doing the job. They are trying to make it work. They're bringing concerns. We're trying to address those. As we continue to do that, just know that yes, kids' education and having them in person, the teacher is being the number one indicator of student success. And with them in person, it works. But the teacher has to be focused more so on, hey, I get to teach, and not so much on what's going on around me based on the safety of our kids. So we're working with them on that. And they are constantly making sure, working with the union representation, we try to get teachers and district staff and athletics and the bus drivers and the secretarial staff and the parapros, everybody that we are communicating with to try to take care of them as we get those messages coming in the central office. We're trying to react because it is new. There's no blueprint for this. So as far as an update, you get more of one next month as we come in, because we'll have more data that we'll be able to actually pinpoint how many kids actually got into trouble because of a mask. Approximate number in secondary, approximate number in elementary. How many staff members, how many have we gotten to where they've gotten their first shots or their second shots? Or we'll be able to give you percentages without giving you names. So overall, the way I'm looking at the situation, I could tell you we're off to a really good start in the first 2 and 3 weeks. Depending on which administrators and which teachers you're talking to, they can tell you the same thing. But when we pull them aside and say, now tell me exactly what you need so that you can be more comfortable about doing this job, that's where we start getting the answers. That becomes that piece that Craig was talking about with those teacher talks. They're not always in groups. There's sometimes, like it was today when I went into one of the kindergarten classrooms, and the teacher pulled me out in the hall and had that quick conversation. That this is mind-boggling, but I'm trying to make it work. And I'm saying, I know it's uncomfortable, and we do appreciate. And I know she said, I love the kids. I said, I know you love the kids, and that she wanted to do the best that she could. So I share that with you as the update. They are out there in the trenches, and they are trying to make it work. And there are parents who have shown the appreciation, and there are kids who show the appreciation. We can only take what we have now, and let's not change it. Let's at least try to move forward the way we are, where we are now.
Dawn.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I have a question and then I guess 2 questions. So as far as like the lunches and the busing and etc., there are schools across the state that have been in person since August, September. And are we looking at how they're conducting their lunches and busing to help ease the anxiety of the people running those programs, and maybe taking some of their suggestions or ideas. And also, I'm already concerned with next fall, and I is it in March, Kevin, that Trevor presents us with, and you, as far as school of choice and the numbers and how long we're going to leave that day open, how many we're going to allow, how many students are we going to allow? Is that in March?
Are you talking about for the 21-22 school year?
Yes.
Yes. I don't think that's March. I actually think that's, you know what? Trevor's still there. Trevor, that's usually April and May, isn't it? When we open up the window?
We could go March. I believe we have done March and we've done April. So March, April is when it is, and then we're posting by April or May. It looks a little bit, if we're just going open the whole summer, then it's not as big a rush. But obviously, if you're going limited, then that's a little bit more of a conversation.
I'm just wondering if the board could be provided with some information as far as like our class sizes and being able to keep them at a safe number. So if we have 5 total kindergarten classes, that means to keep our numbers down, we can only allow this many kindergartens, so we may not be able to open up school of choice. I did see that they're even considering in some states that if the parent chooses, they're trying to pass some laws where they can have them repeat their grade this year. And that's going to be they're looking to try to pass that as a parent's choice. So one of my big concerns with that school of choice opening and closing timeline is that the board, before we have to help make that decision and vote on that we know, okay, we have a space for 100 kindergartens. We have this many right now, this many enrolled, this many in person, this many virtual currently. And, some of those numbers, because when we go by a percent, it's very hard to say, we don't know how many seats we have available in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, on and on.
We can have Trevor and Gina and I can come to the committee as a whole in March and actually share that piece so that the board, but you would get information on board docs that would show what the numbers look like this year, and then comparison to what how much room is actually there, that would be able to start that discussion. So Trevor's got a spreadsheet that he uses, and we can share that spreadsheet or a copy of it, because those numbers, when he goes in, you'll get the PDF copy of it, should I say. And then we'll be able to come in and mark the committee as a whole. So we'll make that, which is good information for the board to know, because Trevor can also talk about how we get to those numbers and the classroom sizes, how many classrooms are in the district and for each building. On your taking the ideas from other districts, yeah, our administrators, the ones that have been hired and those that have returned, they have gone on and beyond the call of getting these ideas, from even having a dot on seats during lunch, to where there's middle schoolers sitting in pods during lunch, to where there are the ideas on the bus. The buses, there's seating charts, and that we're getting bus drivers to understand why there's a seating chart, and that it's important that we make sure students are going in, and students know if they're told, hey, you just need to sit in the same seat, then they sit in the same seat, so that we know. And most times they're sitting with family members. So those things have been taken into account, and those have been done. But even with those schools, a number of them do not have as many students as we have. that are in the building or riding the buses right now. And that is another thing that we're trying to work through. So yes, we are taking those ideas from those other districts and knowing that they only have 12 to 1,300 students and we have 2,200, or excuse me, 2,000, and that we are constantly trying to make those adjustments along the way.
I appreciate that. You know, Kevin, I want you to know that I'm not just talking about the smaller schools. I'm talking also about a couple of the schools that I've been looking at that are even larger than ours. So,
oh yes,
I do
yes.
want you to know that I do consider the size of our district, and that is one of the big concerns for mine going into next fall in our school of choice, and how that might be changing because of our numbers.
Very good point.
Tim?
Yeah, hey, Kevin, I don't know if you can answer this tonight or if it should be addressed on the committee of the whole in March when you have more information on the rate of vaccines and things like that. But when do you foresee a good transition going from the 3-2 split we have now for 6 through 12 to 5 days and 100% E2020? You know, a good handoff point.
Yeah, right now I would say that the first, the teachers need to all be with both of their shots in 2 weeks after their second shot, which is middle of March. 2 weeks later is spring break. So that's going to be after spring break going into April, right? That's with the teachers. The Calhoun County Health Department, right now we're hovering between 6 and 7% in the county, when the state is between 4 and 5% at the state level. So Calhoun County, we're still too high. It needs to be down below 3%. And so those are the first two factors to take into account. And then when we get into March, as we're watching those numbers, then we start thinking, if kids are moved into E2020, by the time we get into April, there's only 7.5 weeks left of school. And you don't want to start taking a senior or a junior, or actually any of those kids at the high school where the credit counts. Not to say middle school credit doesn't count. The grades do count in middle school, that we don't put them in a situation where it feels like they're changing schools. Because when you change them from a teacher into a different program, it's like changing schools. And those are not educationally sound practices in order to do that. So I would say we come back in March after we have this conversation about the number of students and the window for school of choice, that each month we need to come back and have that conversation. But I don't see this is going to be a situation that's going to be favorable for parents or students to make a change from here to the end of the year for the last 9 weeks of school. It's just not educationally sound thinking right now. That's why we're trying to add extra days to support those virtual students.
Question of my own, Kevin. Just to be clear, when you say 4 days a week, you're also speaking for hybrid for 6 through 12, correct? Because we've had a lot of feedback on class sizes, et cetera, for 6 through 12, but that was your recommendation in your discussion on even hybrid would only give 1 day for virtual, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that was only going to bring the numbers down, and it was only 2 days a week.
But it would only give one virtual. One day for virtual students.
That's correct.
Because we still don't have enough staff to attend to those for more than the allotted virtual days.
Correct. Because we're using the same teachers. We don't have like the extra content specific teachers. We don't have enough of them sitting out here on the side to go, oh yeah, we got plenty of teachers. That's staffing. Oh, that's, if I may, that the staffing is an issue with transportation, teachers, parapros, secretary. it is a problem across the state and is hit even harder in our county because of where the numbers are right now. So that is really when it comes to subs.
And our transportation, our vaccine date, that was for the entire district, correct?
That's correct. All 250 plus. That's correct, sir.
Awesome. One more question on the quarantine process. Are we looking specifically at the 6 foot, 15-minute rule, or are we taking, if we have a positive case, are we just jumping and saying the entire classroom is quarantined?
Yeah, we're talking about elementary because they're in pods. When I say pods, they're in groups. That elementary teacher is in there with all the students all day, even when they're going to lunch. So if the teacher becomes positive, then the whole class is quarantined. If a student in the class becomes positive, the teacher and the whole class become quarantined. But then the teacher is still trying to do virtual learning while they're out, which is why we're still teaching virtual. Now, secondary, we're trying to do, which I'm saying we haven't done yet because we hadn't had a situation yet. We'll be trying to do the 6 feet and the 15-minute situation, right? Cumulative 15 minutes. But the reason it's taking 48 hours, or it will take 48 hours, is because there's so many different areas that the student is in or the teacher with her classes. Yeah, we won't be able to say the very next day, yep, we got it. We found out today, and now it's going to take the 48 hours so that we can say for the other students, you weren't in that bubble and you weren't in that quarantine window. So now we can bring the rest of you back. And that is a practice that was used with a couple of districts, neighboring districts to us, had that same situation to occur. And they were only 2 days a week, but it took them time to actually do the contact tracing.
Can I ask a question, suggestion, and you take it from here? Sure. By my understanding from everyone speaking, it looks like we have seating chart on the bus. We have seating chart through the hours. We're talking 6 through 12 here. Seating chart at lunch. So we have pretty much where that student is in relation to other students for 8.5 hours a day. Yep. Could we possibly look into asking each student, maybe help with parent, to write that information down?
You mean as to who they're next to?
Correct. So you have, I'm going to use my own son, for example. You have Tyler is going to write down who he's sitting by on the bus, who he's sitting by in first hour, second, third, lunch, etc. If we have the willing participation in that, maybe help with that process. So if and when that does happen, we don't have to shut an entire school down.
Well, we have to go. You remember Mr. Hutchins when he showed us the seating chart that he had in his hand that said, hey, here's where the kids are sitting? That was lunch, right? So then we have the classes that have the same thing. We have the buses that have the same thing, right? So we have to get our hands on those lists. So we wouldn't even have to ask the kids in case they forget a friend or two to put on the list. We're able to go to these 6 people and say, we need your list based on this child. And then we have to get with the health department to actually tell them who's quarantined for them to make the letters. And then we have to call the parent, because if we don't, those students are coming back to school the next day. And so that's what takes the time, is having to call each one of those. And if you're looking at a bus of 65 students, you only want to have, which I hate to say, you only want to have 5 or 6 kids impacted. But for one day, that impacts the whole bus, because we got to make sure that we get the list and it's these 5 students. And then we have to go from one group to the next. That's why it's time consuming.
Thank you. Craig?
So, Kevin, as you know, I always take an evaluative approach to almost everything. And I guess my first question, because what Jeff said actually led to some other things, at least in my way of thinking, and that was when we're looking at a classroom, and I'm imagining that at the high school and the junior high, we're looking at trying to have half of our students be in a classroom at any one time, typically, as we would have last year or the year before, right? So to me, the next question becomes, how are we doing the process by which we're protecting the kids when they're out in the halls? Because it's those other events where kids get rambunctious because they're kids, those types of things, and going into a classroom type of things, boyfriend girl types of things, where we're trying to look at this from a perspective of, okay, so we want to reduce our total numbers, but what we're missing is as much what Dana brought up earlier. If we're having a group that's gathering around the entrance to the school at the beginning of the day and they're not wearing their masks, and we've got a sticky new virus variant, it really becomes to me more of not a question of will that happen, it's when is it going to happen, because it's those issues outside of the classroom that we really may not have as much control over.
Correct. And that as I was saying earlier, there's no blueprint. This is a work in progress. We are constantly finding something else that we're going, oh, we hadn't thought about that. So here's how we can handle that. And it's happening at each building. But with this group of building principals and their assistants, they are constantly in contact and communication. And Jackie, who is the coordinator for this COVID effort and communicating with the health department, we're constantly finding something that's different that we didn't think of. And it's not just happening in our district, it's happening in other districts also. And I only know this because my wife works in one of them. But at the same time, I have friends and superintendents in other districts that are saying, yeah, we didn't think about that. And this is what we had to do. So it's a constant work, but there is no foolproof. There's no foolproof plan, which is the conversation like I had with the teacher today. She knows that we're trying, but she also knows we have kids that are sitting in the classroom and she's in there hammering it out, teaching, going about it, trying to be as separating with kids as possible. So it is still a work in progress. So there's no easy answer that I can give you for that, Dr. Corpola, except for the fact that, yeah, it's still a concern as we go from one concern to the next.
Sarah, you're muted, hon.
I double clicked.
There you go.
I had a question about buses, because you've mentioned assigned seats on buses, but my source tells me that on a bus, it's not an assigned seat, it's one person per seat, but you might sit in one seat one day and one seat, on the way home. So that is a concern to me with contact tracing, having lived through quarantine last week in my own household and knowing the rules and what you have to follow. I don't know if we need to fix that. That's a concern to me because that would take out a whole bus.
Kevin, writing as we speak.
Yeah, and I appreciate your sharing. There's two things. One was just kind of sitting in whichever seat when they get there. The other one is one to a seat. The buses are filled just like classrooms. So if there's a bus that has enough room to have one to a seat, then I shouldn't have a delay on any routes because there's room on that bus. So I will be taking another conversation and look tomorrow to find out exactly, are these buses filled like our classrooms are filled, because that's where we started and that's where we'll need to continue, because there's no need to have a delay, an hour delay because we're short a route. Now, maybe there's a different type of bus that this is occurring on, but I will find out if there's a special circumstance, but I will check into that tomorrow. But thank you for sharing.
You still have your hand up, Sarah, or are you? Thank you.
Double click.
Trying to be polite here, and the whole switching screens while viewers are watching this. I'm trying to help with that. Anyone else have anything on this topic for Kevin? I was also going to keep this to my comments. First and foremost, I want to thank all of our staff. Nothing is fun with this. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Our first vaccination is 2 weeks.
24th. Wednesday the 24th.
24th. We're already scheduled for our second vaccination. Parents, please help us. Talk to your children. Kevin, I want to thank you. I had the opportunity to walk the high school with Kevin the other day. I can say and I think Kevin can agree with me, we peeked our head in about 5 classrooms. The entire classroom was all spread out. Might have been a third, maybe less than half of a normal size classroom of head count. Everyone's spaced out. Everyone's doing great. We got to watch in between classes of going to 4th hour and going to first lunch. So we had the opportunity to see what in between classrooms look like and the lunchroom looks like. Once again, I want to thank everyone at the high school, staff and students. Literally within 3 minutes, we've seen 2 students in the hallway. Everyone was in their class. Everyone was out of the bathroom, fast, easy, or in the lunchroom. We walked in the lunchroom. Yes, the amount of students in there is very condensed. They are sitting one person apart, which helps a little bit. But I think on a majority of that entire lunchroom and the amount of students that were in that lunchroom, if you were to take a 6-foot ruler around each kid, you might touch 3 other students. So the limitation of student to student contact in the 6 foot 15 minute and keeping the staff kept moving. So that eliminated the 15-minute deal. I can't thank everyone at the high school enough, including our students. And the biggest thing that Kevin and I actually even looked at each other like, wow, we did not see one student in that exchange coming up and down the stairs to the lunch and down the hallways. We did not see one student without their mask on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very impressed.
That's
so
correct.
I just wanted to state that on that topic. Anyone else have anything more for Kevin in this? All right. Thank you for that update, Kevin.
All right. You're welcome.
We will move on. 3.05 Superintendent Goals Update. This is our 3rd meeting on this topic. The updated goals were an attachment on the agenda. Everyone should have received that. Does anyone have any questions for Kevin on any of the content, wording, addition, removal of any content on that attached superintendent goals? Abby, you got your hand up.
Not any questions. I just wanted to say it all made sense to me, and I appreciate the detail and the timelines.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Anybody? Kevin, are you okay with go ahead and finalizing this tonight, or do you want to move it to next weekend or next weekend?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Yeah. Next Monday, it'll be a content agenda item.
All right. I don't think we need a vote. We'll go ahead and get it over there.
All right.
3.06 Review Policy for Board Staff Communication. This has been brought up a couple times. We decided to bring it to the board. In all honesty, Kevin was the first one to bring it up on looking at it and seeing if the board wanted to address this particular policy that is currently one of our active policies. We are looking at specifically PO 3112. Professional staff, board staff communications.
So if I could just make sure that there's some background as to why this has become a question, is that I've shared this with Jeff, and the question is either in order for me to enforce the policy, then that means I have to have the board to actually abide by the policy, or the board would have to rescind it and get rid of it, and then the board can talk to staff as long as they want. So that's the reason this policy is here. Abby? I'm sorry.
Abby.
Go ahead, Jeff. You sorry. Sorry, I ain't go up.
Abby, go ahead.
So I was glad to see this on here because I just think it's good, good learning for new board members. But I think this policy has worked really well in the past, and I like it. I don't see any changes that I would recommend or suggest at this point. It just seems like it works.
Well, we're having some issues with it working right now because we have. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Abby.
What I was hoping is that we could just kind of go through it because it's a new policy and just see what, if we could talk through it and make sure if anyone has any questions about any section, it might just be new learning.
Okay, understood.
Does anyone else have anything before I? Okay, so a couple things that have been brought to my attention. We're now bringing it as a board. One is the comfortability level of some staff being able to bring things to Kevin's attention. They don't feel comfortable with taking it to Kevin's desk. So do we look at that as Kevin is your boss? You need to take it to Kevin, or do we need to alter something on this policy to give staff the opportunity to talk to someone else? Hence that same someone else should be their teachers union. The transportation department has a union, so on and so forth. So we're trying to eliminate, by all means, I even told Kevin myself, I will never not answer my phone, but it is my job to take the information, whatever came through that phone, and direct it straight to Kevin as it should. Kevin?
So the issue at hand, let me put my hand down while I'm talking, is that there are district staff that have processes and steps they need to go through when they have concerns. And if they feel like calling a board member is going to situate their concern, what they're finding out is they still have to come back through the actual process, either talking with a union person, or first they should be talking to the actual supervisor, because then the supervisor might go, oh, I didn't realize that, and then be able to fix the problem there on the spot. Or if they're not comfortable with talking with the supervisor, as we dealt with teachers and we have with transportation, they have union representation. And the union rep is able to talk with the supervisor. If that is still not getting the answer, then they should be coming to central office. Here's the issue. If they think calling the school board members is going to help, it may make them feel to where, yes, they've been heard, but to get the situation settled with an answer, it has to come through central office after the supervisor. Here's the issue at hand. If they're not doing that, then they're finding themselves even more frustrated because they believe they have gone through the proper channels. So I agree, as Jeff has said, if we're not going to ask you to not answer a question, if there is a staff member who is reaching out to you, but turning them back with support and understanding to go through the process is going to be what is needed to help them the most. But there's also other conversations that are occurring and have been occurring before even the new members came on board. to where comments of their budget in certain staff members' programs is no longer there. And a board member approaching me about that, and my having to share with the board member, had that person asked their building principal and didn't get the answer that they wanted, they should have been asking in central office, and we would have been able to say, the funds are still there. They're in the budget. No one's hiding money, but you have to follow the process. And I'll end with this comment. They may not like the answer, but not liking the answer does not mean communication is not occurring. It is. It is occurring, but they have to go through the process and steps. And the only way to help them is making sure they understand that. And for the most part, there's a lot of adults on this district staff, and they understand that. But they've tried with the questions before, and they didn't get the answer that they wanted, and they will now come to you. And they will come to you either thinking that you're new to the board, or they'll come to you because they really don't want to hear the answer because it's not the answer that they wanted.
Kevin, at the same point in time, can you reassure us that if an issue does come to you and does need to go to the board, that you are willing and able to bring that to the board and not take action if action is needed? Yeah, and I will share with you that day-to-day operations, I have to make those decisions. But just because I have an actual staff member that says, I bring it to you, so now I want you to take it to the board, it doesn't work like that. That is not, they're not telling me what I'm going to do with information. I'm going to try to help them with the information. And then if they don't like the answer that they're hearing, then they have public comments that they're able to come and make. I was just going to say that too. That's right. That's where they get to come make. And then that's when the board is able to ask me to either report out or to come with some type of answers as to the process and where that is. That's one reason the ideal of money missing special performing arts program, that never occurred because it never was taken through the proper channels. And even after telling the board member, I even mentioned to the board member then, I don't need you to go back and tell that person what I just told you. I need you to let that person know to go to the building principal so that then they can come here, because that also doesn't work. Because now they're going, oh, I get the answers from the board members. No, you get the answers from the district staff in the process. So that is what we're trying to get to. Now, there are some legal implications to these steps that are taking place. And I have Brad Bonastic, who is the attorney from MASB here, if you would like to hear from him based on this policy and some things that can be shared as to what legal implications that we do not want to leave the district exposed for some type of legal status. Thank you. I do see Abby's hand up. Abby, if you could go ahead with your question. I don't see anybody else, so maybe Brad can touch on your question also.
Sure. So the question was under the very first section, the staff communications to the board, where it talks about the right to appeal to the board on important matters through established procedures. I think you kind of touched on it, but could you review what the proper appeal process is for a staff member to take once they've actually gone through the proper channels? If they're not happy with it, what is that appropriate procedure? I just am not sure what that is.
Brett, you want to try to give a swing at that one?
As far as the appeal process?
Yes. Yes.
Well, generally that may relate to a claim that the administration is not following the collective bargaining agreement, and that could be channeled through the grievance process. And that was kind of one of the things I was going to bring up in terms of possible liability, is that when staff members approach board members on particular issues, those issues are already covered by the staff member's collective bargaining agreement. And the staff member may not even be aware of that, because your bargaining agreement are going to cover wages, hours, and working conditions. And that's what a lot of these questions involve that come from staff members to board members. And obviously a board member is not going to be familiar with a 40-page, 50-page, 60-page collective bargaining agreement with all the provisions in there, while the administration that was involved in negotiating that bargaining agreement, is going to be familiar with those provisions. So, one of the risks that come into play when you have communications with, individual communications between staff members and board members is that, a board member may be saying something or responding to a question that is, completely contrary to what is indicated in the collective bargaining agreement. And, that's what you want to avoid. That could possibly lead to a grievance and in arbitration. And, those are the situations that, could, come up when you have those type of communications. Back to the appeal issue, Kevin. Yeah, I think most of that is going to be covered by the collective bargaining agreement, but maybe just a general complaint that falls outside of the agreement is something that could be appealed to the board. I'm not sure what that could entail, but I would say just a general complaint possibly could go through the appeal process.
Kevin, if you might, can I address Brad?
Yes,
Sure.
yes,
Thank
sure.
you. Brad, so are you saying that staff members are going to be much better off going into their union rep than they would taking an individual board member outside of a board meeting into conversation?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, if a staff member or a bargaining unit member believes that the administration is not following the collective bargaining agreement, yeah, clearly you talk to your supervisor about that. But yeah, going to union representation and getting your union officials involved and maybe correcting that situation, that's certainly an avenue as well. And that doesn't have to be a grievance either. That could be done very informally.
And also, could you touch on the obvious unofficial communications, personal friendship, non-working related conversation to district staff outside at a venue or a household or an outside gathering?
Sure, and that is going to happen in school districts. My mom served on a school board for 20 years, and the staff loved her. But she always drew that line. She was more than happy, to talk socially with individuals. But when it came to their direct duties and responsibilities, she knew that those conversations were off limits. And what this policy does, it does provide protection to board members. When you have a staff member that wants to come to you and talk about a possible controversial matter, you have that policy to rely on. So you have it applying consistently to 7 board members, to ensure that, you're not going to get mixed messages or different messages sent to the staff, because that's generally what this policy comes down to. I mean, there's one Kevin, there's one building principal, maybe an assistant principal, but there's 7 board members with 7 different perspectives and possibly 7 different interpretations of a possible policy. And once you start getting different messages from different board members, that could create a lot of confusion within your district, and that's what you want to avoid.
So, Brad, my next question would be the directive. I'm going to be point blank here. Regardless of policy, our phone is still going to ring. Our Facebook Messenger, whatever, signs of communication is going to ring. Can you give us directive on what our proper answer to their phone call should be, as far as you need to contact your building supervisor?
Yeah, and the board's just half of it, remember. I mean, the other half is staff. And it's incumbent on your building principals to instruct staff of these policies. Not putting board members in difficult situations where they're going to have to tell the staff member, no, because of this policy, we can't talk about this. But if that communication never happens, because you have staff members who are aware of that policy and know that they can't come to a board member to talk about working condition, their duties and their roles and responsibilities, you never get to that situation where you have to tell a staff member no, or you have to tell a staff member to talk to an administrator. Staff members need to be put on notice of that. And if they have been put on notice, they shouldn't be coming to board members.
And last but not least, as specified in the document, it's all official communications policy, etc. We're not talking about a hey, good job, or hey, what are you doing next Friday? We're talking about official school business, correct?
Yeah, something that involves your role as a board member.
I just wanted to touch on at no point in time do we want to tell our staff that they cannot contact us. We have the proper channels in place. We have the proper policies in place for them to do a lot more if they went to their building administration and work that way than they would otherwise. Yeah,
I think so. And, I don't think this is going to be a difficult issue for staff. I mean, it is common in the workplace. Most corporations have a board of directors. MASB has a board of directors. I would never think of going to my board of directors to talk about my executive director. To me, that just seems like the worst thing to do for an organization, that I'm trying to undercut my executive director by going to my board of directors. So whether that happens in the school context or the for-profit or nonprofit context, it's just not a good practice for any type of employment situation.
Thank you, Brad. Dana, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah, this is Dana. I just I guess I just wanted to kind of reiterate with what Jeff said, because the feeling that I get, that some of the staff feels like, is, hey, we used to be friends and we can't be friends anymore because I'm not allowed to talk to board members. And that's kind of that's kind of the feeling that, like, it comes across to some of the staff members. And I just want to make sure it's really clear what Jeff said. Like, for example, I'm going to use Jeff. I'm going to, his kid and Mr. Moran are in the same grade. So they're obviously going to be friends. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. And like, because I feel like it's not about being transparent. It's about having relationships. And I think like managing in fear is kind of how they, some people may feel, and constantly bringing up the same incident over and over again probably doesn't help that at all. And so, like, moving forward, if we could maybe not bring up the exact same example every time, I think that would probably make the fine arts teacher feel a little bit more comfortable. So if we can just say it happened, but not, I mean, because this is like the third time we brought that up, and it feels wrong to me. I'm sorry. I just have to state that.
Well, I can bring up 3 other examples, which also are being utilized. I mean, we have the one with transportation right now, right? We're aware of that one. Transportation is like, okay, they're growing pains, but there's a process in which they need to go through. We also have teachers. When it came to, hey, are we going to bring kids back into the building? They should be here, but they didn't like the answer that I was given. Okay, we know parents didn't like the answer that was given. It was 45, 55 difference one way or the other. But you still have a process that you go through in order to make sure you go through those actual steps. There are numerous examples, but when we go back, I'm sharing what is looking like starting to occur again, because there are staff members, district staff, who've been told That is not the way that's done. And I say told. That's like talking to a child. They've been given the policy and shared with them that here's the process I need you to follow through with. If we don't have board members telling them the same thing, they're not going to follow through that way. That's all I'm trying to say.
And I understand that. I understand that we have to have rules. I understand there has to be policies. I 100% understand that. I just want to make sure that we aren't making anyone feel intimidated or wrong for what's happened in the past, and we need to move forward.
Understood.
Thank you, Dana. Dawn?
I think I'm a really great example of being put in this position. My daughter and son-in-law are both staff at Pennfield, and they're aware of the steps that they have to take. There was a time that there was some correction that needed to be made, and it was made, and I think our staff is aware of this. I think our board is aware of this. I do feel like when there's a friendship or relationship of some sort and they're expressing a feeling, then you just say, you know, you need to go to your person and try to work this out.
Thank you. And I want to reiterate too, it does say shall. If you, and Brad, thank you for going over that with us. It shall, but I think the bottom line here is I'm going to ask, I think we should ask Kevin as a board to maybe send communications out with everybody touching on this and reassure them that they can feel comfortable going to the next step, because I think I'm going to touch on that again. There's been several instances where people don't feel comfortable going to their direct supervisor. So maybe a step by step. If you can't go to this person, which is your direct supervisor, then this is the next person, etc. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we all know that the common sense here. It's so much easier to call a board member or call a friend that's a board member and say what you got to say. But I respect everyone on the board and know that everyone is doing what we're supposed to and not guaranteeing or promising anything, and stating to that person that literally the only thing we can do is to do our job, which our job is to pass that information on to Kevin. So
I think you've got Sarah and Dana with her hand back up.
I got Dana or Dawn.
I think it was.
Okay, Dana.
I never put mine down.
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
I think Sarah put her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate Abby and Dawn and what they have to say, because sometimes you come on as new to a team and you know you might want to make changes or look at something and without the history of how it came about or how it's worked. So I appreciate Dawn and Abby speaking to that. And I think as we look at these policies, we'll rely on you and Craig to speak to you know, how it has worked or hasn't in the past.
Put your hand down if you would, Sarah, so I'm not confused. Thank you. Again, we want to reiterate, anyone viewing, you know, there's proper steps. We're not turning you guys away. We love each and every one of you. We are not turning you away whatsoever, but you have unions in place for a reason. You have building administration in place for a reason, and Kevin there to do his job. If for whatever reason that you're not comfortable with the outcome, no matter right, wrong, agree with Kevin or not, you have the right to properly bring it to the board in public comments.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, I don't see anybody's hand up. Is there any desire to move this to discussion, or are we good with this policy? Thank you. We will move on to 3.07, review policies for social media. There are 4 attached policies. I'm going to go through each one individually, and if there's discussion, great. If not, we're going to move on to the next one. So first, we're going to start with PO 7540, computer technology and networks. Touches the do's and don'ts on our internet policy and our computer policy. Does anyone have anything to discuss on that, or are we good with that policy?
So Jeff, do you want a little background on the that first policy? And was that a .04, the one that you just gave, the first one?
No, 04 I think is the last one I'm going to touch on. No,
okay.
0167 is the last one.
01. It was .04, I think. It's 7540.04. Is that?
So that's 7540 is what we're on right now. Communication technology and networks.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
It's been attached since Thursday. Everyone's had a chance to look at it. Is everyone in agreement with this? Any interest in discussion to change or alter this policy? I see no hands. We'll move right on.
So Jeff?
Yes.
The question that I'm sure there's other members on the board that is wondering is, why is this policy here? Is the discussion of either getting rid of it because there's a social media piece in it, or like the first one you just went over, the fifth paragraph down addresses the social media and the internet applications and the communication of interactive dialogue between users. And the board authorizes the instructional staff to access social media from the district's network. Yes, you're right. Go to the next one. You're correct.
Correct. I think everyone's in agreement with that wording, and let it stand.
I do have my hand up.
I'm sorry, I did not see you, Dawn. Thank you for. Go ahead, Dawn.
I've hit that hand button so often that I don't know if it's white when it's up or black when it's up. But anyways, on that one, I do feel that Kevin has had a hard time with the Panther Den page.
Actually, it's the 7540.04.
Okay. I'll wait.
That's the next one.
Yep.
All right. Next, PO 7540.04, staff network and internet acceptable use and safety. This is where everyone's had a chance to look at it, where it touches on the do's and don'ts of what we can publish on social media, etc. Dawn, I know you got your hand up.
No, I don't. Sorry.
So, Jeff, this is the concern is not just with the Panther Den, it's also with board members' personal pages, as well as our staff that have pages that also have information that's out there, which is on second page, bottom of the page under social media. That an employee's personal or private use of social media such as Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, etc., may have unintended consequences. And then the reading after. I believe that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is that having Brad speak to that paragraph and that point as to a legal reason for this policy. Again, if the board wants to eliminate this policy altogether, because when it comes to my job to implement this policy, I have board members that is doing the same thing that I have employees doing. So therefore, which is it? Are we enforcing policy, or is this a policy that needs to be taken out? And if it's being taken out, Brad can give any legal advice based on the taking it out.
So can you touch on can you explain to us? Because the only thing I see is inflammatory comments, district that comprises the district mission, undermining staff relationship. and ultimately causes disruption. Are you saying that is happening right now?
I'm saying that we have community and staff that are making comments on pages that are of that nature. And if those pages do not exist, then we do not have that to where it has to be addressed with those staff members, but it's showing up on board members' pages.
Okay, can I address Brad, Kevin?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Brad, can you touch on this, on what is necessarily deemed basically inflammatory, undermining staff versus a simple comment of whatever, why is bus 17A an hour late? I'm just going to use something that just came up in the last day or so. Can you touch on that, Brad?
Sure. Yeah. So that second statement there, and I'll go ahead and read it again. While the board respects its employees' First Amendment rights, those rights do not include permission to post inflammatory comments that would compromise the district's mission, undermine staff relationships, or cause a substantial disruption to the school environment. So that standard is what's been set by our courts in determining, what does or does not constitute free speech by your staff members. So yeah, your staff members have a right to free speech. Obviously, outside of the classroom more so, but still, that's not unfettered free speech. It is restricted, and if that speech is related, to the roles and responsibilities of their position with the school district, and it has the purpose or the intent of maybe undermining staff relationships, read that to mean undermine the relationship that staff member has with his or her supervisor, or just generally cause a substantial disruption to the school environment or the employer environment, that is not going to be protected speech. So I think what Kevin is getting at is when you have social networking sites that involve board members, and you have staff members going to these sites making comments, it really puts the administration in a difficult position, because it's creating, that issue. Is that protected speech that is being posted on there by staff members on a school board member's social media page? It may not be protected, and if it's not protected, that could result in disciplinary consequences for that staff member. So I think the risk is, obviously, I'm not going to say board member don't have a social networking page. That's unreasonable. But what I've always advised board members is keep that social networking page purely social. Don't invite comments from staff members on that page relating to that staff member's role as a teacher or as a bus driver or as a maintenance worker.
Okay. Dana?
Brad, I have a question on top of that, because I've never thought about that before, the way you said that. So for example, very active parent before I was on the board. And I'm a kudos giver, always have been, like, especially when teachers have gone above and beyond for my children. My question is that now inappropriate? First of all, if I'm just saying, great job, Mr. Claypack, I loved what you did in class today. That was, Olivia came home really excited, or super excited, Mrs. Bruce, she was just on top of things. I'm just nitpicking teachers or administrators. So that's my first part of the question. And then my second part of the question is, I guess it's not a question, it's more of a statement. So you're not saying, for example, we have this Panther Den, which is it's a plethora of knowledge. So as long as we post positive things on there, or if somebody says, hey, I have a new student, we're moving into the district, this is something that I posted there. Somebody posted it today, and I said, I would recommend that you start by calling, the, administrative office and find out what it is you need to do. Are you saying that's bad too, to do something like, I want to make sure I'm understanding this?
All right, let me address the first question first. No, I don't think there's any issue with this providing accolades to a staff member that may be a social networking network. I don't see any concern with that whatsoever. Just once the comments start getting into possibly criticizing, discussing roles and relationships with a subordinate or supervisor, that's when you've kind of gone a bit too far with the communications, and possibly getting into situations that may not be protected speech on behalf of the staff member. On the other issue, when you have an informal general social networking site that kind of gives the impression that it's run by the district, and information is put on there, I think there's always a little bit of concern that it could be misinterpreted, being that is the school district's official position on a particular matter. Particularly if a board member is involved in posting that information. I've never been to the website, so I have no idea what it entails. But I'm not sure if your administration has a social networking presence. But if it does, then then I think those type of communications should be channeled towards the district's social media page, rather than an informal page that doesn't represent the district. It's kind of hard to answer that without actually seeing the site, I guess.
Abby, you have your hands up.
So thank you. The informal Facebook page, I think, is the one that has that we've had the most questions about, just in general over time. And so I'm going to ask some specific circumstances. So, for instance, does it matter if a school board member is the administrator of the site or not, or just if they comment on somebody else's post or not? Is there a difference between those? Second of all, is it that Panther Den site is really helpful and useful, but is there a way to manage for the district to help manage that, or to be in charge of managing that it could serve its same purpose? Or is it just for parents, not for school board members? I think those are the kind of guidance that would help. I don't know if that's too many questions at once.
Well, yeah, I really see a lot of blurred lines there, and those are difficult, very difficult issues. If you have a quorum of the board that is involved in that page, and you have constant communications among a quorum of the board on that page, then right there you have possible Open Meetings Act violations, the risk of violations. So that always has to be a consideration for the number of board members who are participating on that page and the issues that are being discussed. And it kind of goes back to the policy. I'm not sure if we've reviewed it yet, but the policy on board communications, as far as who is able to comment on behalf of the board. And in most cases, it's the board president who, by a majority vote of the board, by passing the policy, has designated the board president as being the spokesperson on the board. And then if you have a site that appears to be kind of like a board site with a number of board members on that, and you have multiple board members commenting, that may be seen as other individuals commenting on behalf of the board. So that could be a problem as well. And if it's just a matter of providing information, about the district on this site, I would think that a lot of that information, could be channeled through the administration, whether it's something that's found on the website, or if the administration does have a social media presence, possibly communicating with the administration via social media.
So Brad, you got some hands up there. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Abby, can you take over for 2 minutes, please?
Sure. Dawn, your hand was up.
Yes. I feel overall the Panther Den page has been a great communicator for our community, not just our district. Whenever there has been an issue brought to my attention, I've blocked the comments or removed the whole post altogether. I've been very cooperative with that. I am not the only administrator on there. There are 2 other people that are not board members that are administrators on that page. I think getting back to the whole purpose of this conversation, which is a social media policy, I cannot imagine our district having the time to visit staff, board members, etc., people's social media sites, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, whatever. So I would suggest that we remove the social media policy, because even if you did find something on one person's page that somebody felt, oh, that's wrong, that's not good, then, well, what about so-and-so? And well, so-and-so put this and so-and-so. I mean, I think that just could get totally out of hand with today's social media. I mean, you got Snapchat, you got TikTok, you got all kinds. Who's going to watch all of that stuff?
What's TikTok? No, I'm joking.
Maybe Brad, could you respond to that?
Sure. I guess, one thought I have is, I mean, maybe the Panther Den can exist without board member presence? Does there have to be board member presence on that den? And does that, if you do have board member presence there, is that creating a confusion as far as whether that person is speaking as a parent or speaking as a board member? And again, you're an elected official, so you never can take your board member hat off. You're a board member 24/7. So while you can say I'm speaking as a parent here, technically you're still speaking as an elected official, speaking.
Well, I can tell you, I can help you on that. I don't say anything on there. The only thing I do on there is share, the cheerleaders won the district champs or this, so there's not, it doesn't go down that path.
Craig, you got your hand up. And thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
It seems to me, Brad, that part of our challenge for the future, in a way that will reduce the stress related to something like a Panther Den, would be that we as a board really have to have a shared consensus about the idea of having disagreeable conversations in an agreeable fashion, in which we come to consensus, but it's not perfect. And that if the community knows that we're trying to sort things through in that fashion, that then a lot of this will be out in the open, and decisions will be made. And a lot of what could erupt on a web page would essentially go away, because we're having that type of discussion. So it seems then that we would be able to avoid things like, okay, so we have a major disagreement over a policy, but the fact is that the vote is as the vote is. Mm-hmm. And we just have to come to the conclusion individually that we can't continue the fight after we've left the board table. And I think that's the way we avoid the issues on the Panther Den. And I would like to think that whoever's editing the
Excuse
Panther
me,
Den.
Craig, can I just say one thing?
Let
This
me
isn't
finish.
about
Let me
Panther
finish,
Den.
Don.
Dawn, please let Craig
let me
finish.
Okay.
So it's and this isn't even necessarily related to the Panther Den either. This is just in general. I think that that's what Jeff has alluded to since he's been on the board, and I'm sure others have, is the idea that we're here to process information, do the best we can, and try to make sure that we're making the best decisions so that we can go away from our gatherings without the sour grapes, perhaps, and make sure that we don't have it erupt, because a lot of success is going to be about people letting things be done.
Dawn.
And go ahead.
Well, it's like I said, I mean, we need to read the policy again and consider our personal Facebook pages. I mean, I feel like the Panther Den is being used as the only example when I have seen things on in the past on people's personal Twitters, personal Facebook. There's never been a one time that the Open Meetings Act has ever been violated. My question to the board is, who's going to track everybody's social media? Not just the boards, but the whole district staff social media. This is the way of the world right now, and I think that's impossible to do and do in a very across the board line.
Jeff, can I address that issue?
Please, Brad.
Sure. So I don't think it's the responsibility of the administration to go and check every staff member's personal page, but it will be the public that brings it to the attention of the administration. And there are a number of cases where a staff member, a principal, even a superintendent put something out on social media that created a firestorm in the district. And the administration isn't going to have to go very far or go to, search 100 pages to find that, because it will be brought to their attention, whether it's brought to them by the media or a parent. So this is not about, regulating every social media account that your staff members have. It's about putting them on notice. Don't put these things out on social media. If they do and they get away with it, then so be it. But if they do post it out there, and then Kevin gets 10 complaints about it, he can go back and point to that policy and say, you were clearly in violation of this policy, and that's going to result in discipline.
Right, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't feel like that's ever been an issue. Kevin's never came to me with any of that, so.
Yeah, that is the issue, is that I can't go to employees and hand out consequences when I have comments that are going out on Facebook pages that board members are connected with. And that has been since it started. And I said, even then, and I'll say now, is that when only certain people are allowed in to a group, and there are certain people that make comments about employees, and I'm talking the public in general, I'm talking about whatever, yeah, that's right, or comments that were made, previous board members that followed up with comments of support, for comments of graduation, comments about the way if they open the schools for certain kids. When those comments are followed up with support, that is a small group that then comes back to say, wait a minute, that's okay for board members to do? Because if that's the case, if you decide to eliminate this social media use, then there are other staff members and other people on the district staff that could then create their own page. And it becomes one page against another, and it is going to do nothing but fall apart at the seams when it comes to my job of making sure to enforce this policy. Now, I've said that more than once. I mean, I've said that with the previous president. We've had this conversation, Dawn. We talked about what Brad has shared before, that page, along with now, Jeff has made announcements about board meetings with a video when I'm in a meeting and I have people that's asking questions, and I say people because they're sending them to me about, well, wait, is this, and I'm going, yes, I just talked to Jeff. I told him this, but did you tell him to do an announcement on a Facebook page? No, I didn't tell him to do an announcement on
Kevin Simmons.
Yes.
I don't want to hear this, sir. I specifically called you. Don't call me out in a board meeting. I specifically called you.
Hold on.
I asked for your permission, sir.
You're not going to talk to me in that manner. So start over and clear it up. Start it over and clear it up.
Do not talk to me like that.
No,
Kevin, I specifically called you and asked you. I got your permission before I did that video. I stated that something needs to come out to the public. Everyone is asking questions. You said you did not have time. You were going into administration meeting.
Yes.
I asked you, do you mind if I do a quick video just stating that you're going to come out with a letter before noon? And you said yes.
You didn't say video. You said,
Kevin
can I answer questions, Jeff? You didn't say video. Because if you said video, I would have said, you didn't say video. Because if you said video, I would have said, no, wait. But
Kevin?
You said, can I tell these people this? It was not a video. That's why I was surprised.
End of that topic.
Yes, correct.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Abby, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I think there's two things. One is the staff policy, and the other one is the board media policy. And I think that this is kind of both and I think I think that there's a couple things that I was hoping to talk about, especially related to the topic of what we post as far as school board business. I think that we're all just learning right now about how to do that well. So I really hope that we can kind of set that aside and talk about what is the right way to do school board business. But I guess the other thing, back to the websites or the Facebook pages or whatever that are manned by school board members or commented on school board members, I think there's just too much of a variety there to worry about the details. What I wanted to ask Brad is the policy itself. I've always viewed policies as a way to protect the school and the board members. So for me, the reason to have a social media policy is to provide guidelines so that if someone does do something they shouldn't, you have something to come back on them with. That if we don't have any policy, we won't have any way to provide any guidelines to people at all. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, Abby, that's a correct point. So, anytime someone gets disciplined or possibly terminated, due process is involved. Okay, no one can get terminated really without due process, and part of that due process involves notice. Being put on notice of what you're doing is wrong. So, if you don't have a policy in place that doesn't tell staff members what they're doing is wrong, they haven't been put on notice, of that behavior, maybe wrong behavior, and could be subject to discipline. And, they could come back and claim that, well, that's an arbitrary, capricious decision by the administration. Then I wasn't aware what I was doing was wrong. Show me the policy or show me the rule that says that. So that's from the staff perspective. From the board member perspective, obviously board members have free speech, but it really puts your administration in a difficult situation where you possibly have board members that are acting contrary to the social media policies, because it's not up for the administration to to oversee the board, right? I mean, it's I always tell superintendents that's a no-win situation when you're trying to get involved with a board member's conduct. The board's supposed to police itself, and that's why you have policies that allows a board to police itself, determine whether the board individual board members are complying with that bylaw or complying with that policy. And if the board isn't policing its members, yeah, it creates a very difficult situation for the administration.
So what should the board be worried about policing itself as far as social media? Is it just the business of the board that we need to be concerned with, and let the social media, the support of the district or passing unofficial business, or we can't not say anything. We have to be able to have a website. And I think the other policy, the one that we haven't looked at yet, has more of that sharing business of the board. And maybe that's really what we should be focused on right now. I don't know.
That's a great point, Abby. And I guess I'll be kind of old school in this, is that transparency is why we have the Open Meetings Act. Okay? In my opinion, Open Meetings Act is all you need in regard to transparency. That shows your community what you're doing as a board. Every member of your community had a right to participate in this meeting tonight. When you meet in person, every member of the community has a right to come to your board meeting and address the board. Everyone has the right to review your minutes to determine this is what the board acted on. So I think a board should speak through its minutes, but when you have individual board members speaking through social media that may be contrary to what the board has acted on or what the minutes indicate, creates confusion. And I just don't think that results in good governance.
So is sharing a set of board minutes, approved board minutes on a social media page would be appropriate?
Yeah, board minutes are a public document. I mean, if those are minutes, a lot of boards will put them on their website. You're not required by law to put minutes on a district website. Most districts do. But yeah, I mean, if you have a copy of the minutes and you want to share those minutes, those minutes
then you're not worrying about giving your own personal opinion about it. You're just sharing the minutes.
You're not speaking as an individual there. It's the board that's speaking through those minutes.
What about agendas?
Agendas are not required by the Open Meetings Act. You're not required to post them in advance. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of the utility of posting an agenda on a social networking page. I suppose it could be a way of providing notice to your social network that this is what we're going to be talking about at the board meeting tonight, if you're interested. But again, agendas can be amended. And then if you have an agenda that's out there and then it gets amended, that might, rub some people the wrong way. Well, it wasn't on the agenda that I've received through my board member social networking site, but then I read the minutes and this issue came up. What happened? Well, the board amended the agenda at that meeting and, added another item to the agenda. So, I think because agendas aren't set in stone, not really a great practice to post them or put them out in advance. That's my thought.
And what about things that are like resolutions, like the resolution that we passed the other night, if that was like a board passed resolution that's signed and voted on, is that something that what would you think about us posting that on our website?
Resolutions are somewhat political. So the resolution of, wanting to have in-person board meetings, that is clearly a political resolution that, you're likely going to share it with the governor's office. You're going to share it with MASB government relations. So I don't have any issue if that's being shared on a social networking page. As long as it's clearly been approved by the board, and there isn't any doubt on that.
Okay.
Dawn, you had your hand up.
I don't know. It's so far gone right now that I don't even remember why I put my hand up.
Yeah, my 2 cents is it's that fine line of posting to social media. I mean, as far as this policy states word for word, long as you're not undermining staff, you're not inflammatory comments about the district, and essentially, personal information. Again, a personal point of view of it, but I don't see what the issue is. We seem to have backlash on everything we post, and pages. I'm sorry, but this page is we're going to keep talking about this page. I'll talk about this page. This page is one of the best things that have happened to collaborate our district in quite a while. Unfortunately, our school pages aren't up to date. We don't have personnel that are going to sit on those pages and be able to update the information like this particular page that we're talking about does. There is a lot of valuable information on there. So I guess we need to figure out where that fine line between dictating every word that we post and every comment that we comment on Facebook versus what is quote unquote inflammatory comments, undermining staff's destructive to school environment. Abby, you got your hand up.
So are we only looking at the one for staff, or did you want to look at all of them kind of as a whole for that particular comment? Jeff, I wasn't sure if you were thinking about the staff one particularly or the other one also.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that would go for staff too. We wouldn't expect our staff, just like I don't believe that any one of us would go on social media whatsoever and downgrade our district or, get into situations like that. Yes. I
don't either. Yeah, that wasn't really what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of cut and dry. That we wouldn't, I don't know.
So the other little short one, the use of social media, that just says social media as, what does that say? Social media as defined in bylaw 100 shall not be used to conduct any form of board business. To me, that's the one that the board needs to really kind of wrap our brains around also from a board point of view.
Which one are you? I'm sorry, Abby, which one are you on? What number?
So for reference point, she's referring to PO 0167.6.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, I would ask you, this was brought up. That seems like a very broad statement there. Can you touch on that? Basically the board business. What is that defined as?
Yeah, well, I think the intent there, Jeff, is to avoid a possible violation of the Open Meetings Act. Again, the board should be conducting business in an open meeting under the Open Meetings Act. It should not be conducting business via social media where everyone may not have access to that social media. And the Open Meetings Act isn't structured to allow an open meeting in social media unless you follow all the virtual meeting requirements and that everything's been posted and all the other requirements come into play. So I think that's really the intent of it, is, there shouldn't be any deliberations, no discussion, board members about board business on social media.
Dawn?
Yeah, I don't ever remember that happening unless there was an announcement that there's a board meeting tonight at 6:30. Someone would have to refresh my memory if there has been board business or an Open Meetings Act broken ever on the social media. I have not experienced that. I'm not aware of it, and if someone could maybe refresh my memory. I mean, I don't feel like it seems to me that it's being made to sound like there's a quorum of board members participating on a social media site, breaking social media or Open Meetings Act and disrespecting the district or a staff member or administration, and that is not happening.
Dawn, I was not intending anything like that. Personally, I just was trying to understand the circumstances of all the different examples that we should be thinking about. So I'm not aware of anything either. The only time I could think that could accidentally happen is if there was a string of comments and you had 3 or 4 board members, unbeknownst to each other, commenting on something that had a long string of comments.
Right. Anytime there's been something with a long string of comments, the whole post has gotten deleted, and it never had 4 or more board members. So, and as far as like the agendas and that, people can go to the school website and it's posted. So even if somebody was to put that on their personal Facebook page and say, this is what last night's meeting covered, I mean, that's public information anyway through the internet. And I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier, like to do the he said, she said, well, that he said that that's petty. And I don't recall if it has ever happened, it's been immediately taken care of. So I think that there's been more good than bad on this page.
Thank you, Dawn. Sarah?
I just want to say that, tonight we're taking a look at this policy, and I'm going to say that I think it's good to have it there in place. It keeps us all in check. The discussions we've had tonight, if anybody was on a line or something, I think we've made a lot of things clear about where that line is and where we need to stay in the future. So I'm going to suggest that we keep it and we move on tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else have anything on PO 7540.04? All right, we will move on. PO 0143.13, public expression of board members. Kevin, did you have something here?
Did you say 0? Okay, 0.1. Okay, yep, I see it. Give me a second. Let me read through here really quickly.
Basically, express written statement as official position of the board. Board members shall, when writing or speaking on social media matters, make it clear that their vows do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or other colleagues on the board. Bylaws, individual board members not explicit sanctioned by a majority of its members, except for the following.
Yeah, this is the same as the previous, except for this one is where board members making comments or statements. So yeah, from time to time, however, individual board members will make public statements on school matters. As you just read, if the statements imply or if the readers and listeners could infer the opinions expressed by the statements made are the official positions of the board, that's a comment that if it comes up on any Facebook page and then or personal page, that this I think would be just as Sarah said earlier. That paragraph, which is like the third, starts the third sentence. If the statements imply, then that whole paragraph is one that I believe Sarah made a point that if we didn't know before, we should know by tonight. That they don't necessarily reflect the views of the board or their colleagues on the board.
Sarah, you had your hand up.
Sorry, just didn't put it down before. I'm terrible at this.
No problem. This is another one that's it's up for interpretation, in my opinion. With one person referring to every comment, every keystroke made on Facebook post versus what is board business, what's not board business, what's appropriate, supporting our school. Initially, if you keep this in place, we might as well just delete any social media that we have as board members. It's all under interpretation.
May I speak?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Abby.
with that, oh, sorry, Abby, go ahead.
That's all right. I think, again, for me, it is open for interpretation, but I think that we're all intelligent, reasonable people and we can apply it appropriately. And I think that what it does is gives the school district some protection and some guidelines to help us hold each other accountable within. And I think there always are going to be those gray edges, but I don't, this board is not in the gray edges right now. So I'm not worried about that. But if there was ever a situation where somebody was crossing a gray edge, then we'd have this policy to go back and look at together. So I like having it in place.
Thank you. Dawn?
Who would be the one interpreting? That would be my question. Like, if there was something that was offending this policy, wouldn't that person be reached out to by our legal group? I mean,
Brad's shaking his head.
It would be your board president. Essentially, the board president is responsible for enforcing this policy. So if I get a question from a board member and that board member has concerns about a colleague violating a bylaw, I tell them you have to get in touch with your board president. Then it starts out with a conversation between the board president and the board member. If that dispute continues, then the board president may place that issue on the agenda for the whole board to consider, whether this individual board member is acting contrary to a bylaw.
so I guess my question is, because I do want to be clear on it. I'm not out to offend anybody. I do like to be able to communicate to our community. So if I put something out there about don't forget the board meeting Monday night at 6:30, or we have a choir concert Friday night at 7 p.m. Come support our choir department. And then somebody's like, well, you can't put that on there. Like, who makes that call? That's what I'm saying. Like, who is the one to determine whether it's appropriate or not?
Brad's saying the board president.
Actually, I would say that this is the point at which we would need to have the consensus of the board, because in a way, it should be shared. The whole idea of what our expectations are should be shared by everybody. I've been on the Panther Den to just see what's going on in the last 8 months or 10 months, whatever it is. And to me, people make very honest statements, and there's no sense of, I don't get a sense that there's any kind of vindictiveness involved. But I think that if you were to say that we had some statement that came up by a board member, that the board really should get together and discuss it and try to come up with a consensus in order to hold everybody responsible or to set expectations for the future. You can't drag back what's been said, although I guess you can erase your posts. But the idea being is that you're everybody's saying, yeah, I think we better be more careful about this in the future. And when we do that, I think that's a healthy thing for us to do. And I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand, Jeff.
It's okay, Craig. Dawn did though.
Yes, and Craig, I appreciate that comment because that is exactly my whole point. Like, are we going to borrow trouble, or are we going to just, I mean, I'm fine with keeping the policy, but I mean, who's the one going around and looking? I don't even like Abby's Facebook, Jeff's Facebook. Who's got time to do all that?
Well, Don, if I may, it was the same thing Brad said earlier. And I've shared this with Jeff before. Any and everything that is out there, even when you think it's on a private messenger piece or a text message or an email, those things come back to my attention because they say it's reflective of the district. So I'm saying that if that's the case, I don't go out looking for it when it just comes to my attention through those avenues. But a good point is made. But a good point is made as to, hey, who is supposed to get this information and say if it's okay or if it's not okay? And I have no problem with bringing that information back to the school board. However, when I did that on one other situation, again, Dana, this goes back before, it was a situation that was before, and it was a comment that put the teachers in an uproar, and it was like it was, and I say it was put out to where they interpreted it differently. Okay, well, that was their interpretation, and it was brought to the board's attention. And then there was a letter that came after, and all those, they continue to have those type of things that are sent to my attention. So if it's the board president that I need to hand it over to, then I'll hand it over to the board president. And if it becomes a discussion, then as Craig is talking about, then maybe it becomes a discussion. But I'm having a time with the number of things that are coming across my desk, dealing with social media, and that is coming from all different directions right now. And for me, we've got more than enough that's going on to where I have no problem with setting it aside. But then I've got people saying, yeah, well, we told you and nothing happened. So I don't want all of a sudden everybody think it's okay because it's not being addressed. So that's why the policy is there as a question tonight is, are we taking it out? Or I say we, the board taking it out, or if the board saying, no, I think we need to just continue to work with it. Well, if we continue to work with it, then that's what we're going to do.
Brad, you had your hand up. Are you good now?
Just had a quick point, Jeff, in dissecting this policy. This policy existed before social media, and how you know that is subsection B says copies of this bylaw shall be sent annually to local media by the board president. So initially, the purpose of this policy was to restrict individual board members from communicating with media members in terms of saying things that were contrary to what the board acted on, saying things that were contrary to possibly the board policy. So that essentially was the intent of this policy. And it gets very complicated when you apply it to social media. And that's why you have the ancillary statement down at the bottom, where board members' personal or private use of social media may have unintended negative consequences to the board member and or the district. Posting social media should be done in a manner sensitive to the board's member responsibilities, policies, and legal operations of the district. So initially, this policy was meant to cover comments made to the media. Now everything put out on social media is published, right? You can't argue that it's not published. It may be only published to certain individuals. So it's kind of interesting, how this policy, how it was originally intended, and now how you possibly interpret it to cover social media.
Thank you, Brad. Dawn, you have your hand up.
Yes, and so maybe we need to just tweak this policy, because I mean, we have so many Pennfield Facebook groups, and I'll say it's Pennfield. Pennfield's not just a school, it's a community. So there are every grade level, every Brownie group, every Boy Scout, every choir, graduate, alumni, people that have passed away. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on and on as far as Pennfield groups, and then you have everyone's personal one on top of that. We have soccer, we have 8th grade soccer, we have varsity soccer, we have JV soccer, we have lacrosse, football, little league football. I mean, there's hundreds, literally, Facebook groups of Pennfield. And then the school has all their own pages for every building, and the school itself. So maybe we need to just tweak this policy somehow.
I would like to make a motion to table this discussion, all 4 policies, to next week's meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Craig. Any other discussion on these 4 social media policies?
I just have one suggestion related to Dawn's comment that Brad, do you think that there are other types of language and policies out there that might improve on this, that we can look at to Dawn's point, if there's wording that would be more appropriate for the board to consider?
I don't know. That may be a conversation you have with your Neola consultant. I don't know how many variations that Neola has of this policy. But essentially what it comes down to, there are hundreds of social networking sites, but just 7 board members, and it's really up to each individual board member to take a look at a policy and say, well, am I in compliance with this policy based upon what I'm going to post on this social networking site? It's up to each board member to police themselves, and then the next step is the board president, policing the policy. So, yeah, I mean, social networking is ubiquitous, but as a board member, you have to take a look at these policies and look at whether you're complying with them based upon your activity on those pages.
Thank you, Brad. And I agree. This will give us some time to take a look at it, think amongst ourselves on maybe some wording changes as Dawn referenced. But with this motion, it'll give us 7 days to think about that, and then we can bring it back up for discussion next week. Anybody else have anything else on this? Sarah, if you would take a vote to table this for social media policies to next week's agenda.
Okay, Dana Wells Jenny.
Yes.
Jeff Wolfersberger.
Yes, ma'am.
Tim Wood.
Yes.
Dawn Fortin.
Yes.
Abby Green.
Yes.
Sarah Jones, yes. Craig Corpola.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Motion passes. This will be on next week's agenda. Thank you very much. 3.08, rescind amendment made last week on our resolution letter. Tim, if you would.
Yeah, last week when we were talking about the letter and the language that was in it, in a push to get back to in-person meetings, I brought up a motion to include the same in that letter to bring back sports and extracurricular activities. We voted on it. It got put in. Since then, it's kind of been discovered that legally it creates some logistical issues and takes away from a united front from the other school boards, as we're the only letter with that language. So I wanted to put forth a motion to rescind that motion.
Thank you, Tim.
That.
Seconded by Abby. Thank you, Abby. Any discussion? And I'll just touch, it was brought to Troon as described in last week's meeting. It was brought to Troon and it was suggested to not put that in there. So we are in collaboration with, or more of an agreement with the rest of the letters that were being submitted by school districts around the state. No other discussions. Sarah, if we could take a vote to rescind this amendment made by Tim last week, Thursday.
Okay, I'll start with Jeff this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Tim.
Yes.
Dawn.
Yes.
Abby.
Yes.
Sarah, I'm a yes. Craig.
Once again, because I wasn't here last week, I say no.
Okay, Dana.
Yes.
All right.
Understandable, Craig. Thank you very much, sir. That is it for presentations and discussions. 4.01, comments from the public. Tammy, did we have anybody else or anybody join us?
No, we did not.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. 5.01, comments from the superintendent.
Yeah, so Jeff, I'm going to go back to earlier, and I'm going to publicly apologize because maybe that is what you said, but that is not the message that I picked up on when you said you were doing a video. Because I was really surprised when that information came to my attention, and I went, a video? So you, it was right before a meeting. I was working on a few other things, and you did want to get a message out. In my mind, I thought it was just going to be another one of those Facebook posts. But if I, I can't say that I truly knew that that's not what you said. So I'm not going to be accusatory. And by the way, I was not trying to put you on Front Street, as we used to say back in the day. I was not trying to front on you here at the board meeting. Professionally, I've done this long enough to know that's not the way to do business. So I will put that out there to you that was not my intent.
Thank you, sir. I don't want to interrupt you, but thank you.
Yep. So I will say I only got two things that I would share about superintendent comments, that the work that our district staff has been at doing this change, this shift, going from going from virtual to in-person, that our staff, this district staff, did that in a week, and that's usually 4 weeks work, and that they turned that over and that they are constantly working hard. And my job, as I said earlier, was to work with them so that they not just do the job, but they work beyond what their capability is. So I just wanted to give them a pat on the back for the work they've done to this point, to say congrats, and that I know that I've gotten messages that have come to me from parents to let them know that they appreciate the work and that the continued support that they have from this great community of Pennfield. I'll also add, my last comment is, it is Black History Month, and just like last year, I am available to speak to classes, regardless of what age, on equity, social justice, or just the fact of growing up Black male in Mississippi during the time of picking cotton, and being able to know the KKK was only 30 miles down the road in Tupelo, Mississippi. So there's an opportunity, in that there's lots of historical people that are out there that we read about each day. And as I was invited to classes last year, I just want to put that out for our teachers and our students and staff. I'm also available this year. So with that being said, that's all for me tonight.
Thank you, sir. 5.02 True Law Notes. These are just our monthly notes from Troon. Kevin, do you have anything to add to those?
No, except for the fact that they're constantly changing. And that's the reason that they're in print. And as we get those, we'll keep putting those in for everyone to take a read over.
Thank you, Kevin. 6.01, comments from the board. Abby.
Just a quick one.
Yes, ma'am.
I did want to just follow up from Dana's concerns at the very beginning of the meeting, that if there are kids standing outside in this really, really cold weather, I know, Kevin, you're going to follow up on that and correct it if it's happening. And just making sure that Dana knows that I was really just looking for procedure to get that in the right order, in the right place, not that I didn't want it to get taken care of. Thank you for bringing that up.
Appreciate it, Abby. Anyone else?
I'd just like to thank the district for all the hard work that they're putting in to bringing our students back to school safely, and our staff, everyone doing what they have to do to make Pennfield great.
Thank you, Don. Anything else? Abby, you still have your hand up, or you got it up again? Okay. So yes, to touch on Don's, it's kind of our professional courtesy to give the superintendent time to prepare. He said he's got time to prepare. That is a very good topic and issue, Dana. Curious to see what is brought back to our attention next week. So that will be addressed in proper form in next week's meeting. Thank you, Kevin, for agreeing to supply the data needed to answer our questions upon that. Last but not least, Kevin, I wanna say the same thing. I do apologize, sir. That was very unprofessional. As honestly being the second day, I'm sorry. Probably about 12 hours on the job. Nope, not even that. We got done, I think, 11 o'clock that night. So maybe 9 hours on the job. I called you looking for guidance, and you gave me guidance. That's the only reason why I did it. All I asked from here on out, I do apologize, sir. All I asked from here on out.
We're good. Thank you. Sorry, I meant to interrupt you.
No problem. I thank you for everything you do. I would ask if you have any concerns, like you've asked us, if you have any concerns with either one of us to bring it to our attention. Last but not least, I know the JV girls got to play, or the girls basketball got to play tonight. JV, it looks like they lost by a couple points earlier. I was actually trying to find the score of the varsity girls, but we got sports. We had bowling, both girls and boys bowling won Battle Creek City tournament over the weekend. Congratulations. I don't have any swimming I think wrestling can start like Friday, I believe. Trying to keep everything going. So boys basketball is in play tomorrow night. So we've got some sports back, guys. So hopefully we can keep this rolling into summer. So
Hey, Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up. Friday and Monday, there's no school. Those are, if you would, just add that into your comments because I forgot to mention that. Yes.
I just got a text message here. There is no a reminder. That was actually a very good question that was on Panther Den earlier and got answered pretty quick by community members.
Okay.
As a reminder on our calendar, on our district calendar, there is no school whatsoever. So that is for virtual and in person. There is no school this Friday or next Monday, K through 12.
That's correct.
So
that's correct.
With that, I, as always, thank everyone for their time this evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the visitors that Kevin brought along to help present. Very much appreciate everyone's effort. So if nobody has anything else, I do not see any hands up. We will move on to adjournment. I move to adjourn this meeting.
I second it.
Second from Dana. I thank you guys very much. Have a good evening, and we'll see you back here next week.